Welcome, everyone, to Week 13 of the NFL. It is upon us. It is Zach Moss week. How could you not be excited here? Of course, this is the NFL First Look show. We'll set the table for everything you're going to see throughout the rest of the day here. Of course, the deeper dive coming up next. Live before lock after that is the full block you expect to get you ready for football. And once again, as always, here bright and early on a Sunday, I'm Chris Spags, joined by my friend, my Cleveland-based friend. Once again, it's not based to Cleveland necessarily, but I don't know where you are, Matt, but I do know you love those goddamn Browns. And I was asking him if he's going to tout Joe Flacco today. We will find out. He's Matt Belman at Fantasy Tips Matt on Twitter. How you doing, Matt?
I'm good, brother. I am based in Cleveland. I was born and raised here, and now after living in a bunch of different spots, I'm back full circle. So yeah, repping Cleveland till the day I die, I guess.
Oh, what a great place to be. Hopefully you also have the jersey with the 32 different QB names on the back to represent the full Cleveland experience.
So good.
Appreciate all you guys being here. Of course, shout out to Owner's Box as well. We'll talk about later on the show, but they help us put on the show every single week here. So make sure to check the link in the description down below. Owner's Box are a great site to play on. And of course, you should always be playing on sites that have less of the sharp players, less of the players overall. Overlay is going to do great things for your bankroll. Decreased rate is going to do great things for your bankroll. And the shot to win without competing in 150 entries against the Awesomes, the Uticows, the whistles going woo out there. You can do that on Owner's Box. So please go check that out. And we'll talk more about them in a moment. But this is a big slate here, Matt, because we do have one very obvious play today, which we'll talk about. And of course, we'll transition to the running backs, but we do like to give an overview. I think this slate lives and dies by Zach Moss. It's not the hottest take in the world, but it has been so rare. I was actually trying to struggle to think of it on Friday when I was doing my show on Splash Play. When was the last time we had a situation like this with this cheap of a running back, with this secure of a role? And I don't know if you remember this one, Matt, but the Jalen Samuel is one that I couldn't remember the name. I was like desperately trying to think of it, but he was 4K on the Steelers. There were no other running backs left. He ended up having a terrible day as a running back, but caught 20 targets in that game. So probably not what we'll see from Zach Moss. But can you remember a situation like this one where there is this obvious of a bell cow back under 5K and DraftKings hasn't caught up on the pricing at all in the last few years?
No, the thing that makes this different is we've seen Moss in this role this year perform really well. So a lot of times when that happens, you'll see DraftKings just progressively price those guys up, even on slates where Taylor is healthy, just because Moss had been productive in the past. But now you're getting him at like his nut low price because Taylor's been healthy recently. So no, it's kind of a combination of all the worlds coming together. It's rare we see plays like that this strong. Here's my question to you regarding Moss. Right now, our tools have him optimal 44% of the time. That's crazy high. Like, you just don't really see that often. He's only projected to be 38.3% owned. I think that number's low. How do you see it?
I think it's low as well. I guess the one thing that you can say if it's not going to be low would be that, you know, it is a matchup against Tennessee. I think we saw last week with the match versus Tampa Bay where Matt and I talked at a lot of length. Hey, is Jonathan Taylor going to get played as much as we think he should because of the fact that he's facing Tampa Bay? And historically, Tampa Bay has been this team that people are afraid to run against. And I think we saw what happens there where the field played Jonathan Taylor at least in the Millie Maker at about 18-19%. We had him projected for 30. So I think for Zach Moss, it's the one thing you could maybe say, but Taylor wasn't this cheap either. Taylor also doesn't have the box score games without the starting running back kind of thing, like Matt mentioned for Zach Moss. So I think it's possible we do see him get more towards that Raheem Mostert versus Carolina range, that Kenneth Walker, I believe, also from Carolina range. I would guess based on the Sims, the highest I could get exposure-wise in the lineup pool for the Sims was 58%. So I think naturally that's kind of the highest it could go. But do you want to put in a bet here? Do you want to put an over-underline?
I think it's over, but I'm really glad you brought up Taylor because it was a point I was going to make that had slipped my mind. Last week's Taylor's ownership was so different throughout different contests. I believe you said he was like 25% owned in the $20 milli.
He was 18 in the milli, and then like he was weird for me. He was higher in the $1 and the play action, I believe, and then also really high in the mini max. Was like I want to say 33% in the mini max. So it was weird. Like I didn't know the high stakes stuff. He was up to 50%. So
he was
where
really
the sharper
high.
Players are, he was going higher. Yeah.
Yes, which is I could see the same thing in Moss, and it makes sense though. Like in the $20 milli maker, getting different has so much power, as opposed to like these smaller field contests, higher dollar, where it just doesn't really make sense to get off of the best play on the slate. I mean, Moss in this role, you're only not playing him, not you, but the proverbial you, is only not playing him because of ownership. Like he stands out like a sore thumb. We just don't see plays like this, as you mentioned at the beginning, on NFL slates hardly ever.
Yeah, so I guess the big question is Zach Moss, and I kind of view it this way, where the Sims, I would say, are pushing over the weekend, pushing a 97.3% Moss. This morning, I ran them right before the show with a blended set of projections. I got him in 100% of lineups on the Sims tonight, or this morning rather. Are you feeling the same way that I do, which I think if you are going to play Zach Moss today, I wouldn't want to try to hold hands with the field. Rather, I tried to do that last week with Jonathan Taylor. Ended up being a little bit above because I tried to match the field's 30%. He was a little bit lower. For this week, though, I feel like it's 0 Zach Moss or 100 Zach Moss, because if you put in 50, you might still be less than the field. If you put in 25%, you're still taking enough of a share of your lineups away. And I think that may be a middleman kind of approach, a half measure approach, if we're going to quote Mike Ehrmantraut from the great Breaking Bad show. But I feel like for me, it's either all Zach Moss or no Zach Moss, and I'm not sure which way I'm going to go yet. Do you feel like that's the approach here, or would you be trying to actually target where the field's going to be and just say, I'll hold hands with the field and get different with the rest of my lineups?
No, I think I see it exactly how you do. The issue with that, and know if you're going to play like that going in, you have to have risk tolerance, because you know that if you play 0% Moss, like, you're not fading him because he's a bad play. You're fading him because the ownership and weird stuff happens. I'm with you. The other problem with trying to guess where the field is it's just that it's a guess. We don't know where the field is going to be in terms of how old he's going to be in different contests. So I'm with you. I think he's definitely the type of player where you want to make a stand on.
And for what it's worth, again, the Sims say play him. Obviously, the Sims, we know, are a reflection of the inputs you put in. They are a reflection of the median projections. They are a reflection as well of what an outcome can give you that allows you to hit other players in other spots. So these are decision choices that you have to make today. But one way to get different on it, and unless, Matt, you have any other thoughts on Zach Moss, I feel like tough matchup, definitely favors the pass game a little bit more. Tennessee in particular really struggles against pass catchers. And let me pull up some of the numbers really fast. But Indianapolis should be facing a Tennessee defense on the year, 0.04 EPA per dropback. Of course, the expected points added metric that I cite comes from Sports Info Solutions, helps you see how much above average either defense are giving up performances or players are performing on offense. But 0.04 EPA per dropback, 0.04 EPA per pass, 0.24 EPA on throws of less than 20 yards, which includes a 76% completion rate in that spot. So I think you could certainly get different, try to target the passes hack. We know Josh Downs gets a lot of targets underneath. We know Michael Pittman, a guy that had a pretty good game last week that was in some winning lineups across various tournaments. Another good spot for him as well. There's an obvious way to get different from Zach Moss, but I guess, is there anything else with Moss that you want to cover, Matt? Because I think that sort of covers the entire picture for me. If you're not playing Moss, you can play the pass game, but you could also just fade it entirely, I guess.
Just lastly, for me, I don't like to make rules on any slate and just have overarching rules for how I'm going to play slate. But in NFL DFS, I have found that when you have these cheap running backs that are really popular, usually they're really good plays. When you have the cheap wide receivers that are really popular, they're oftentimes not as good of plays because there's so much volatility there. So when you've got a running back like this, just so cheap, that's pretty much guaranteed for the workload, I'm playing Moss. Like, I just think he's an easy plug and play and forget that type of guy.
Yeah, and if you are not playing Moss, like, I agree with what Matt's saying there, you're not trying to necessarily go to a cheap back. I would say the closest price point guys would probably be the Steeler backs, where you have Najee Harris 52, Jalen Warren at 5,400. I think those are guys you can get to a sort of a price point pivot. But in general, I would say if you're not going there, you're probably trying to target 2, maybe 3 running backs that have like a 30 fantasy point outcome in their bag. So that's how you get different with Moss. If you are going to go the 0% route or just play less Moss, but it's a tough situation to try to get away from because, like Matt mentioned, it's cheap running backs getting the volume of workload that is what people target. And I would wager that Zach Moss is going to be very highly owned in high stakes stuff. And those are the sharpest players in the world. They're the ones with the bankrolls to dispose for a reason. So just keep that in mind as you go. But there is a pretty big pivot point, or I guess one that'll go hand in hand with Zach Moss in some lineups. Christian McCaffrey at number 2. And in a lot of slates, we've talked about on this show, where if you have the cheap chalk running back, the way to get different is to pay up at running back, get off the tier completely, and then try to separate yourself by having Christian McCaffrey put up 40, while Zach Moss puts up 18 to 20 or something like that. But Christian McCaffrey is going to be chalk this week as well, Matt. 23% ownership directed for McCaffrey in a spot against the Eagles. That not the best one in the world for him. A little bit of a softer matchup outside for some of those receivers as well as out of the slot. Are you going to Christian McCaffrey today with the field? And I guess, what does he mean in terms of the game theory here, where people are going to be paying down for Zach Moss to afford Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah, it's hard not to like McCaffrey here. He's just, probably for all intents and purposes, the best player in NFL DFS, him and Tyreek Hill, however you want to say it. And yeah, it's not the greatest spot on paper for McCaffrey, but he's so involved in the passing game. This game has a really high total. He's just really, really good. It is interesting to me. I mentioned that Moss has an optimal percentage of 44%, only getting, a little under 40% ownership. McCaffrey's optimal percentage is only slightly higher than 15%. And again, that's a product of his price tag, but it just makes it clear to me, like, yeah, I like McCaffrey a lot. I think he's the second best running back play on the slate. I don't think it's close, though. Moss is by far the best running back play on the slate. He's head and shoulders the best play on the slate. So, yeah, I think that rostering McCaffrey makes sense because when you use Moss, you have a lot of salary. But if I were deciding to get away from one of them, it would be McCaffrey.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I think you can also target the mid tier as a way to get different here. Because again, a lot of Moss and McCaffrey lineups will be coming in. A lot of Moss and McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill might actually be in the field today. So a lot of people spending money in very obvious spots. And if that's the case, it kind of tells you what you need to know. If you're not going to McCaffrey, though, you are going to perhaps to Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson. Those guys are number 3 and number 4 in ownership right now. Not too far behind is Jalen Warren, but I do think that Rashad White and Ramondre do represent what the other approach would be, where you're paying for guys in the 5,500 to 7K, maybe a little bit above 7K range. I don't know who would be. I guess Kyron Williams would be a little bit above 7K. Who are you feeling comfortable with Rashad White? I know the matchup against Carolina is one that we have targeted a lot in the past for running backs, but Rashad White's biggest production has been more in the pass game. And Carolina, we know on the other end as well, obviously a very soft offense, but a little bit of fluidity there with Thomas Brown now fully in charge of the offense. No Frank Reich in the mix as special teams coach Chris Tabor takes over as the head coach in Carolina. Are you trusting Rashad White here against the Carolina defense that we have targeted pretty heavily almost every week?
Hard not to at this point. He's taking so many snaps. He's involved in the passing game. Good spot against Carolina here. He looks good. Him and Stevenson, who you also mentioned, look like the clear, like, second level of guys after Moss and McCaffrey. I think that you're right. Playing the slate and potentially like playing White and Stevenson instead of a Moss and McCaffrey isn't going to project as well, but it's going to be so much less owned. And those guys are in really good spots too. Like, I know Jalen Warren's right behind them in ownership. I think that White and Stevenson, just from a projectable level, look a lot better because they're the guys in their respective backfields. Warren obviously has upside and he's cheaper, but I do think there's a pretty big drop off after Stevenson, just in terms of how running back looks in my eyes.
Yeah, so I'm with you on that. Ramondre and Rashad White, too. One thing I will say they both benefit from, and there's a stat that I haven't been tracking, and I don't really know why. I guess it is kind of a small sample size stat, but it is one. Now we're 11 games in, 12 games in for every team. It does hold a little bit more weight. Both Carolina and the Carolina defense, and the Chargers defense allow a 20% target rate to running backs. So I think in terms of PPR points, Rashad White, we've seen have the biggest days as the pass catcher. Ramondre, the second juice that he's had over the last couple of weeks, especially last week, is getting more PPR points as a pass catcher. So I think these guys are both live for their spots where they are in highly targeted running back matchups, facing teams that funnel targets towards the running back. And I think that does stand out. The price tier is the main thing. When you have price tier plus data, I think that has a little bit of appeal. So for me, those guys, I think, are a pretty clear, tier break behind McCaffrey and Zach Moss for sure for what they represent at their different price points. If you're going to a different price point, these are the best running backs between 6K and 8K, I would think, relative projection, relative to all of that. You mentioned you're not as into the guys behind them. We have Jalen Warren, Javonte Williams. Warren, we know, involved last week, was basically a 50-50 share, had one more touch than Najee Harris. With the changeover to new play caller and new offensive coordinator for the Steelers, finally Matt Canada gone. But Jalen Warren, Javonte Williams, Breece Hall, any of these guys stand out, Matt, as, again, price point differences from Zach Moss and the chalk there, but guys that definitely are not as highly projected, even though they do have obviously similar ceiling outcomes.
I'll start with the most expensive, Breece Hall. He definitely looks intriguing to me from a tournament perspective. I mean, even if you watch that Black Friday game against the Dolphins, they were just feeding him the ball. I mean, whether it was giving it to him in the backfield, dumping it down to him, he's a little bit overpriced, but his upside is probably higher even than Stevenson and White, just because I think he's better. I mean, I'm sure it's comparable to those guys, but I'd put him on the same level. Javonte Williams is really interesting. He looks good. Like, he looks healthy. You need a positive game script for him just because they've got Pirine, who they're more than willing to mix in, because Pirine is a great third down back. He's a great pass blocker. He's got good hands. So they're going to lose some of that work to Pirine. That said, I like Williams at that cheap $5,700 price tag. The guy I like least, and it's just because of the murky situation in the Pittsburgh backfield, is Jalen Warren. Like, I get it. He looks really good. He looks like Austin Eckler light. He's been involved in the passing game, but they've still got Najee Harris, who is getting just as many carries as him. I think that between Warren, who's getting 17% ownership, and a guy like Moss, just give me more Moss personally.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable way to view it for sure. And Warren, I think the upside is there. We know he can break the big plays, but you do worry about, the goal line carries being there for Najee Harris a little bit more. I don't think that's going to be a changeover for this new regime, calling plays and designing the offense for the Steelers. Jalen Warren, I think the PPR points can work, but you really kind of need Arizona to stay competitive in that spot for Jalen Warren to be getting those targets. Otherwise, it's just going to be, running Najee up the middle time and time again. And there are some worrying lines out there for the Arizona first half, where I think it was a 56% probability for Arizona to score under 7.5 points in the first half. Obviously, a little bit of a second half team we've seen this year, but I also worry with that combined with the fact that everybody was on the injury report for Arizona this week. I kind of get the sense of thing that we've worried about all year is that Arizona at a certain point has to decide, hey, we're going to tank this out a little bit more. I don't know that this week is it necessarily, but I think it's the start potentially of these guys going out. We saw Zach Ertz get released. We saw everybody be on the injury report. That is a risk point for Jalen Warren, who obviously is going to add value in the pass game. If the Steelers don't need the pass, they're not going to pass. And I think that is definitely a little bit more of a risk. Anybody else you want to reference here? I think one guy we could throw out is Kyron Williams, 7,200. Alvin Kamara going to be a little bit less of a workload than it might have looked like earlier in the week, where Rashid Shaheed not expected to go, Michael Thomas not expected to go. Chris Olave, though, has passed for concussion protocol. A bit of a surprise, where earlier in the year we were not seeing guys get out of concussion protocol in 1 week. Now, I guess Olave maybe had a false concussion or a self-reported concussion that wasn't concussion. I'm not sure what the case was, but Olave is going to be back in. So Kamara's ceiling, it's a little bit lower theoretically, but Kamara and Kyron, Matt, two guys with enormous ceilings who are going to be about 10% owned, at least based on the ownership projections. We'll see if the field chases Kyron a little bit more in an adverse matchup. But are you feeling Alvin Kamara and Kyron as, I think they're different price point pivots to me than Rashad and Ramondre, where the projection isn't as good, the salary isn't as good. These guys are absolute ceiling plays that won't get played as much just because of the fact they are priced a little bit awkwardly.
Yeah, I am not on Kyron here. I just really don't want to spend up on a running back against, in my opinion, one of the best defenses in the NFL. I know Kyron was amazing last week and the workload's there, but I think if you don't use running backs against the Browns this year, you're probably better off than if you've used running backs against the Browns. So I like other guys better. And the other guy you mentioned was Kamara. I can always play Kamara. Like, you're right, Olave's in there, so it takes away his workload a little bit, but he's so involved in the passing game. That game, I think, has sneaky upside. Detroit, New Orleans. New Orleans doesn't have Marshawn Lattimore. We've seen what's happened to the Detroit defense recently. So give me Kamara over those two guys. Not a priority, but I like him in tournaments. And then one other guy I want to reference and ask your opinion on, who I've heard DFS talk about all week. He's going to be really low owned, but people want to play him. What do you do with Devon Achane?
So he's interesting. I worry about the workload coming in.
Same.
Like, I really don't expect him to get, I would say 10 to 14 touches is probably.
He's a 7K number 2 back. Go ahead.
Yeah, who hasn't played in 6 weeks. And, and also that they clearly do care about the health of, like, they're not going to trot him out there and say, hey, go get it. So I think that is kind of a point for concern. We did see Jeff Wilson get that work last week in the Black Friday game. We still have Mostert there, though Mostert was a little bit banged up in practice this week, but is supposed to be a go. I would think with Achane, he kind of is the same play, except the field's not going to be on him. I think that I wouldn't say he's a fish play, because I definitely played him that both the last time that he came back in after the knee injury and before that as well, where he was priced weirdly for that amount of touches, but his touches have been the most efficient in football. Like, Keaton Mitchell was a guy that was basically the same level of efficiency of touches as Devon Achane. And now Mitchell is like coming down to where normal running backs go. And Achane obviously hasn't moved. Like, he's still the most efficient running back that's, I think, at least that I've seen while tracking data since doing this professionally in the last 5 years. So, for Achane, there's always a logic. I just feel like it's a pretty thin logic. And at his price tag, like, I think Bijan's in a pretty good spot. The Jets give up a 25% target rate to running backs because teams don't want to attack him out wide. They can attack out of the slot a little bit more, but the pass game does just funnel down towards the running backs a bit more. And Bijan, we saw, be more involved. So I would say I don't want to go to Achane too much this week, but everybody's going to say that. So that kind of inherently makes him a tournament play.
Yeah, agreed. I feel the exact same way. But then I look at his ownership, like under 1%. I'm not sure I buy that because a lot of people want to play him. But at the same time, if you're playing him over guys that are like sure things, which is why I can't get there. Like, if you play Achane at 6,900, and sure, we've seen his, yards per touches, all that stuff is amazing. You need him to outscore Breece Hall, Rashad White, Ramondre Stevenson, like all those guys. I'm not sure that happens here.
Yeah, I with Bijan, and the chat, I see excited to hear Bijan's name reference, or they're caping for Bijan in the chat. I would say for Bijan, the one thing is like, we know he had the ceiling, last week, felt really good about my Bijan shares in the afternoon where I got him at, I think, under 5%. And then obviously Kyron Williams comes over the top and breaks that up entirely, where Bijan finally could have had, a tournament winning or approaching a tournament winning day. But for Bijan, consolidating the workload a little bit, especially the red zone work has been really big for him. And I think the matchup fits him. So I think he's that kind of guy that can get there. But I agree for like Achane, it's like there's a lot of things pulling away where for, it's also this kind of same case for Breece Hall, where for Bijan and Breece Hall, that's a game where I don't think either team can run away with it. Like the Jets offense isn't good enough. The Atlanta offense isn't good enough. Both defenses are also good enough that they should kind of impede things, where I think that one goes down to the wire regardless of the situation. If that's the case, you're probably seeing 20 plus or 20-ish touches for Breece Hall and for Bijan on the spot. And they both stand out. But Matt, there's a lot of guys we haven't mentioned who are like legit running back names. Jahmyr Gibbs, maybe not the greatest spot, but he's going to be under 10% owned. Derrick Henry under 10%. Singletary, who's still leading the backfield overall for Houston, going to be under 10% against a Denver defense that cannot defend the run at all, for what it's worth. DeAndre Swift, not a great game script for him, but he's not a guy we've mentioned yet. Eckler, David Montgomery, James Conner, people like, I think probably going the wrong way now, but still. Any of these guys you want to really stand up for here? Because like, this is a lot of star power here. It's just not going to get played this week because everybody's going to play Zach Moss, which I think kind of speaks for itself.
I got one guy you didn't even mention, and it's right in correlation with Achane. Raheem Mostert. I mean, he is not getting mentioned at all. He's expensive at 7,300. He's the RB2 for NFL this season. They're in a great spot against Washington. People are going to play the passing game. He's getting similar ownership as Achane. Like they're neither of them are getting owned. It's really, really hard for me to play Achane over Mostert, knowing that neither of them are getting love. Like, because Mostert's the number one. He's going to get more carries here. He's been really productive. So again, I'm not saying I'm going to use him, but he definitely stands out as a guy who's getting way less love than I think he deserves.
Yep. I know. I think that's a fair way to look at it. A lot of interesting names today. So again, if we are saying that Sim's saying play a lot of Zach Moss, that is sort of an obvious play. Obviously, I think there's anybody who knows DFS is going to say that's an obvious play. But that said, the Sims are saying go over the top. I do think, though, if you want to make a game theory choice where you're just going to put yourself in a much lower owned island, I think we've listed a lot of names here and advocated for a few in particular that should get you different. But obviously, you got to make your own choices here for these slates. We'll guide you as best we can. Use the data, use the Sims to find things that are unique, even if they're not, a plus EV outcome in every single spot, not as plus EV as playing Zach Moss. This is up to you guys. I have to say that part out loud because I think sometimes people want the Sims just to spoon feed information. That's not the best way to use it for yourself. Even though you can use it that way, but for NFL in particular, like use it to tell you what you want it to tell you and find your outcome here and make it work for yourself. I'll see the chat looking back live here. Loughy coming back today. Loughy is in fact back today. The run sheet was dropped in the Slack channel. I checked to make sure Loughy's officially back. So if you guys are looking for the original, pure uncut deeper dive coming up next, it will be Loughy and Ben Rasa. So stay tuned for that one and smash the like button now, guys. Of course, Matt and I are up bright and early. We're both dads. Matt went out last night, actually did some things for himself and the wife. So hit the like button here, show some love. We appreciate it here on the channel. And of course, subscribe if you have not yet. But let's keep moving here because that was a lot of time on running backs. But frankly, I think a very important run to talk about running backs here because it is like the most important position on the slate this week to decide what you're going to do. Wide receivers, let's hit on them next, and then we'll talk a little about owner's box after that. Tyreek Hill, projected over 25% ownership at 9,600. I've talked about this in content a few times this week, filling in for Loughy in the NFL Strategy Show, as well as on my podcast, Splash Play, which you can follow here. Subscribe on YouTube at Splash Play Pod. Tyreek Hill, I worry about not playing Tyreek Hill in this spot where Tyreek is not Cooper Kupp of a few years ago, where Cooper Kupp, people are comfortably playing him at 10K, almost 11K some weeks because he was getting you 10 to 15 targets, 100, 150 yards, one touchdown, maybe two touchdowns, was just hitting it week after week. Tyreek Hill is hitting it for the most part week after week. The part that I worry about, though, is him going for 50 here. Like this could be, if you watch college football, the Heisman campaign game, the thing where you put it down to really show who you are in the league. I think Tyreek Hill is the MVP of the NFL. I don't think he'll win it, but I think he's the MVP this year. And he's going against Washington, a team that we have stacked up against so many times. How do you handle Tyreek? Because again, it's going to be Moss, McCaffrey, Tyreek that people play this week. But I don't want to not have Tyreek because I think he's got the livest ceiling out of all of them and could have like legit 50 points this weekend.
So just on your MVP talk real quick, I'm with you. Like, I think it's absolutely asinine that Tua has higher MVP odds than Tyreek Hill. I don't think you could name one person that think Miami would be better off without Tyreek Hill as opposed to Tua. I think Tyreek Hill is the MVP of the league this year. Again, like you, I don't think he wins it, but he's my vote for MVP. And I'm also with you on his DFS upside. Like, he's another one. I think, like with Moss, we project Tyreek Hill to be 26% owned right now. Not going to be surprised at all if that number approaches 50% in high stakes, just because of literally everything you said. Not only his consistent week by week production, but also the fact that you're so scared not to have him, because he's the guy that can really, really break the slate, even probably over McCaffrey, just because of the matchup and his big playability. Reminds me of, must have been 3 years ago now, the Chiefs went to Tampa Bay. He was obviously still with the Chiefs and had the best first half of football I've ever seen from a wide receiver. I mean, I think he had 200 yards and multiple touchdowns in the first half. Not expecting that here, but that's Tyreek Hill's upside. So it gets me interested in all the other Dolphins, knowing that Hill's getting all this concentrated ownership. That said, like on a projection level, it's really, really hard to get away from him here. I'm with you.
Yeah, I think I'll be at least with the field's ownership on Tyreek on the sims that I ran before the show, which I am going to massage a little bit. I was getting Tyreek in 48% of lineups, so almost double the field there. And that was just the top 150. So I do think the sims are advocating for Tyreek being a good play. And as Matt talked about, like when you see a chalk wide receiver who's cheap, there tends to be a little bit of fluidity there. For chalk wide receivers as well who are expensive, there's a little bit of a little bit of ebb and flows for how those guys hit their ceiling or don't hit it. For Tyreek, though, the ceiling outcome, I mean, in your estimation, obviously, this is just kind of talking out of our ass a little bit here, but
Sure.
like he hits 40 points or more against the Commanders, I would say roughly where his ownership is. I think he hits that 33% of the time, let's say. Would you agree that it's like maybe a 1-3, at least a 1-4 outcome, that he does have like this statement game for 150 yards, multiple TDs, if not 200 yards in a TD?
I was going to say 1-4, but also, like you said, it's kind of talking out of our asses. So the difference between 1-3 and 1-4 for me is negligible. And I'm with you. Like, it takes a ton for him to get that much, but if there's a guy who can do it, it's him, because just the big play upside. I mean, if he caught 2 70-yard balls in the first half, no one would blink an eye.
Yeah, that's where I am with it. And Washington is bad at everything that Tyreek is good at. You give up an 8.4% deep ball rate, good for a 0.6 EPA, a 19% touchdown rate on deep balls as well, which are throws of 20+ air yards. So if you're getting the ball downfield and succeeding, which Miami's done better than anybody, Tyreek has 2 deep balls per game that are thrown his way. He's catching about 1.5 of them, and then he's good for over a 1 EPA on those plays. So he's adding 1 point every time they target him downfield. He's adding a point by just getting targeted. So I think for Tyreek, like this is the spot for him. Obviously, you can go to your Jalen Waddles. You can try to get different there and get, hope that Tyreek doesn't hit the ceiling outcome. That's it. But like hard to believe that Tyreek outright fails in the slate. And I do think you have that chance of having the outlier outcome. But there is another guy in his price range who's not going to be the number 2 owned, but Keenan Allen banged up all week. I thought there was a shot that he might not go this week, because we do sometimes see the accumulation of soft tissue injuries for a guy like Keenan Allen has been there for years. And now he's had his highest workload, a role in seasons, basically. And he's still going to be back out there, it looks like, this week at 9K. He's the most live pivot point, Matt, but I feel like we need to talk about him. Amon-Ra St. Brown is in a pretty good matchup against New Orleans. New Orleans funnels targets to the slot at a 50% rate. So Amon-Ra, another guy. Those are really the high price guys to go to, I guess, that are getting ownership. AJ Brown unowned. Do you want to really plant yourself or plant a flag for Keenan Allen, Amon-Ra St. Brown, AJ Brown, or anybody else, I guess, you consider to be really live like Tyreek pivots?
It's definitely not Keenan Allen for me. I just don't really like this spot. He's too expensive. They're in New England, bad weather. No thanks on Keenan Allen. Amon-Ra, the sun god, always in play. I think he's priced fairly. Wasn't great on Thanksgiving. See, this is how you know someone's elite. Was not great on Thanksgiving last week. Still ended up with like 9 for 97. He's a true number 1 wideout. I like him in this spot here. And then the other guy that I wanted to call out was
AJ Brown.
Yeah, AJ Brown, who I like a lot. Just the no ownership perspective of it. I know that when Goddard's out, Devontae Smith has really stepped up. But we all know AJ Brown's upside. I mean, probably only Tyreek Hill has higher upside. This is a guy that we've seen time and time again. When he doesn't get the ball for a week or two, they make a concerted effort to get him the ball because they don't want him frustrated. I think you see that here. He's overpriced for his median projection, but I'm not all that worried about that in tournaments. Like, I want the upside. He's got it. No one's going to be on him at 8,800. I like him quite a bit here, especially because that game environment looks really, really good.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely looks like a game. Obviously, two defensively minded teams in Philadelphia versus San Francisco, but there are some alternate totals that do support that one potentially going over. I always look at the alternate lines, and if you see ones above 50% that are hedges against the market over under a little bit higher than it, you can sometimes go, okay, this game, the markets are worried this might shoot out a little bit more than expected. And those are there for Philadelphia versus San Francisco. So I would say AJ Brown, I would say the point that I would push back on with AJ Brown is it does seem like Devontae Smith with no Dallas Goedert is back to that 1B role, 1A versus a pure number 2 versus number 1. But I think there's even a way where you could go AJ Brown and Devontae in a small portion of lineups this week and try to get full stack and try to really target that game. You have to save money in other positions, but I'm with you on AJ Brown. It's not the matchup on paper though, like where AJ Brown normally goes off. The Niners don't play man at a high rate, 21% rate of man, compared to 63% playing just pure zone. So that's one thing I would highlight, but it's a tournament play. You look at for me, I look at the advanced analytics second, and I look at the ownership number first. And if the ownership is low, like that should override anything else. And for AJ Brown, the ownership is low. Anybody else you want to really highlight here? Michael Pittman's at number 2. I feel like he's kind of a binary play to me where he's going to get you 10 to 15 targets against Tennessee. Those targets probably carry a little bit more weight for the reasons we talked about earlier. Tennessee's pass defense is not very good and should allow big production for Michael Pittman and Josh Downs today. But Pittman, to me, like the range of outcomes is 20 to 30. Like, I don't know that he can really break the slate, even though he can be part of a winning lineup. Absolutely. But you have Cortland Sutton as well, Chris Olave. And are these guys going to be key parts of what you're doing that you really want to, try to push the people onto?
I don't think so. Pittman looks good here. I think he's priced fairly. He does offer some nice leverage off of Moss, who's going to be really popular. He's been productive. I view him as just like a cog in the machine type, a guy that I'm fine playing, but certainly not going out of my way to play. Olave is really interesting in a game that I like that I don't think people will be on. People are probably off him too, thinking that he wasn't going to play this week. Interesting to see where his ownership creeps to. And then the Denver guys. I know that game has the highest or second highest total on the slate. So Sutton looks a lot safer. Judy hasn't really done much this year, but we know has upside. So I think Sutton and Judy, especially if you're, playing the Houston side, look particularly good here. And then one reference point I wanted to ask you about. What's your take on the Washington receivers, like running it back with some of these Miami guys?
So I like the theory of Terry McLaurin a lot because but I've liked the theory of Terry McLaurin all year, which is the part that kind of throws me for a loop. And I know it's always a battle your prior takes versus what you're seeing all year. Like Terry McLaurin just hasn't gotten targeted by a guy like Sam Howell that I would think, where Howell drops back a lot, throws deep a lot, or, historically has thrown deep a lot, throws deep a little bit less this year in this offense. I would think that's the kind of thing that benefits Terry McLaurin, like who's like an air yard king, a guy that should be breaking long touchdowns. Instead, he's just not getting there. It's a lot of targets to Curtis Samuel, who again is in a pretty good spot once again because Miami gives up the most targets to the slot. And Curtis Samuel, I think, is I think he's gonna be more popular than we have projected. Where he's not even anywhere like near the top 10. 7% ownership for Samuel at 4,100, and people have been playing him week after week and getting good results. And I think he's a little bit of like the casual / boomer player that people have been going there. Doesn't project that well, but the results have been there box score wise. And now he's in a matchup where I think the results bode pretty well. Not the highest probability to be a touchdown score according to the betting markets. It's around 77% on the under on his touchdowns. But for Curtis Samuel, like I think he's a more interesting play to me than Terry McLaurin. But I worry about the field's ownership because like guys like Tank Dell, Curtis Samuel, Adam Thielen a few weeks ago, like these guys are getting targeted all the time by the public, and the ownership didn't quite reflect that. And I kind of feel like that's the case here, where I would bet Samuel's above 10%, even though we have him at 7.
Sam, he just makes too much sense from a run back cheap perspective. Like people want a ton of Miami. People don't like rostering a ton of one team without running it back. When they run back, they want someone cheap. He checks all the boxes, and that's not even talking about how productive he's been for people recently. So I'm with you. Sometimes you see this. It's hard for, projections are just that, projections. You don't expect them to be right on. And sometimes guys can fall through the cracks a little bit because they're not projected that well, but the mainstream masses have already been on them. I think we see that with Samuel here. I'm 100% with you. A guy I like in his price here, a little bit cheaper, and you asked me before the show started if I was going to tout Joe Flacco. I'm not, but I will tout one of his receivers, Elijah Moore. Been productive recently, only 3,500. He's got rapport with Flacco, played with the Jets last year. Flacco targeted him a bunch. Again, I don't feel like he's a cash game lock or anything, but provides you a nice, like cheap value and the ability to spend up elsewhere. Kind of like with NBA, you're not rostering Elijah Moore with the hopes that he's going to break the slate and give you a score that's needed. It's more that what you can roster next to him.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I actually think that price tier is kind of interesting this week where you have Elijah Moore. Marvin Mims isn't as interesting now because we are going to have Jerry Jeudy going, it looks like. But A.T. Perry, who should be getting some of that wide receiver 2 run for New Orleans, I think is kind of interesting there. Rondale Moore at 3,400, I think, as well, is an interesting play to go to against the Steelers defense. It's going to blitz a lot. Blitzes leave open the slot quite a bit. So if Rondale Moore is out there running those slot routes, I think he can get there. But Elijah Moore, as Matt mentioned, has historically had pretty high target share playing with Joe Flacco. They play together on the Jets. Elijah Moore, it feels like, has also been quietly productive ever since I've been doing, Matt, since we've been doing the shows together. I feel like you've given Elijah Moore a bit of a boost. So under 10% owned for him. It'll be funny, though, if he ends up chalky, because I do think a little more people know about the Moore Flacco Jets thing than realize. And it wouldn't shock me if Moore was like 12 to 15, I think, just because of that.
I'm with you. Like, he's so cheap. He stands out in a sea of guys that, yeah, there are some guys that have upside there, but he's actually been productive recently. Going on the other end of the pricing tier, 2 guys we didn't talk about that I like quite a bit here. The San Fran guys, both Debo and Brandon Ayuk. Philly has not been good against opposing wide receivers. In fact, they've been one of the worst teams in the league. They've got a great D line, which kind of funnels into throwing to the outside. I like both Debo and Ayuk a lot here. I know their quarterback is going to get a lot of love, but I like the idea of using one or both of them, even if you're not using Purdy. How do you see it?
I agree. I think they're interesting. I think Ayuk would be the play that I prefer a little bit more. Debo is certainly a bit cheaper. Debo, I personally have a hard time always playing Debo because I think he and CMC's roles overlap a little bit too much to hit the true ceiling outcome for Debo. But in a game against Philly where, I know the defense, the chat was saying, oh, it's not tough anymore. It's still functionally a tough defense, especially with the front 4, especially with some of the pressure they get. The secondary, though, out wide in particular, is not as good as it's been in previous years. But I think for Debo, maybe you could say that the Philly defense tightens things up a little bit. Debo can get there. I just like the pure receiver, like Ayuk. And this is where one of my flaws, frankly, as a player is that I love the guys that are great route runners, that really get into open space, that do stuff that I can track with my eye. And then I see the data. And it's like, oh, this guy's also a monster in the advanced analytics and the EPA metrics. And Ayuk is that guy, whereas Debo is just kind of a dude that gets nice, high efficiency touches. So I like Ayuk a little bit more, but I think there's a validity to both plays because Brock Purdy as well, very good QB play to go to. And we know every week he's sim-wise a QB that we get often because of the fact that stack can go off around him, whether it be with McCaffrey or not. I want to briefly just plant a flag for the Houston offense as well as the Pittsburgh one. I know we're kind of talking positively, which is weird because I feel like we've been really like, this play kind of sucks. This play kind of sucks the last few weeks. This week, there's a lot of valid ones.
Yes.
Like Pittsburgh, Arizona. I mean, like Pittsburgh, we're waiting to see how the outlier day. Arizona's the matchup for it. And Denver, I know people in the chat, maybe, at least on a lot of streams that I do, people think Denver's a good defense. They're still not a good defense. They've gotten the luckiest results, I think, in the world of football over the last 5-6 weeks. A lot of bounce passes leading to turnovers. Turnovers are a pure luck metric. They're not generating sacks. They're not generating real defensive metrics that matter. They're not even getting pass deflections at a higher rate. They're just getting very lucky. So CJ Stroud against that matchup with most of his weapons, not Dalton Schultz this week, I think is pretty live. I like Tank Dell. I like Noah Brown. I like Nico Collins. Play 2 to 3 of them if you want in every lineup or, in some amount of lineups, not every lineup. But Pittsburgh and Houston, are they firmly on your radar this week?
Houston, definitely. Pittsburgh, I have a real hard time going to. I just don't trust their offense. I think picking pieces of Pittsburgh makes sense, whether it's the running backs, Freiermuth, George Pickens is cheap, Deontay Johnson. I don't mind like using, a couple of those guys, but I don't want to stack Pittsburgh. Houston is really interesting to me here. I'm with you. I do think, just like in anything in life, there's nuance, right? Like Denver's defense is playing better. They're more confident. They're obviously been able to turn the ball over. I don't think that's predictive of future success, though. I'm with you. And like you see who they've played recently. I mean, last game against the Browns, faced DTR and then PJ Walker, a couple really, really bad turnovers by Cleveland that weren't really any doing of Denver's part. So I'm with you. Like, I think that a lot of that Denver D is so good as delusions of grandeur. Like, they're really not that good. Houston's in a good spot here. My big worry with the wide receivers, and we've talked about this before, I do not want whoever Surtain shadows. I'm not sure who that's going to be here. I think it'll be Tank Dell, which makes me like Collins more. And then we'll obviously get to Brevin Jordan, who is one of the best plays on the slate now in my mind.
Yeah, so I just want to say our BKS collection saying turnovers are not a luck metric. I could tell you as somebody that worked at Football Outsiders for multiple years and tracked it. It's like, it's the least sticky thing year to year because it's luck based. Like, and especially again, I don't want to be the watch the games guy because I hate look at the data. The data matters the most. But if you watch the games, it's like it was legit. They've gotten, and I watch every Broncos game because I've been attacking this defense willfully last month, and it hasn't worked out. It's passes that are hitting receivers in the hands, that are passes where it's an accumulation of things for the QB, where the QB has a brain fart after some ugly turnovers before it. And as Matt can attest, DTR last week had one of the best drives of his career.
Yes,
certainly thus far, like getting downfield.
You can move the ball on Denver, like no doubt about it. I don't know how much of the game you watched last week, but I'm right there with you. One of the biggest turnover in the game came on like a reverse that the Browns were trying to run, that the running back just dropped the ball. So yeah, it counts as a turnover for Denver, but they did nothing to get that. So we see this very eye to eye. Like for anyone who's saying turnovers aren't a luck metric, like you're just wrong.
Yeah, and it's again, like it'll get you results that matter, but year to year, like those are the teams that fall off in defense. Like I'm just telling you that because that's like legitimately a thing that Football Outsiders existed for 20 years and had the back-tested data from before that, from going back to the 70s and 80s to say this stuff. So like pretty confident what I'm saying here. And I think, you can disagree, but keep worshiping at the altar of Denver's defense and watch how it gets you this week against CJ Stroud. If I'm wrong here, if Stroud throws 3 bullshit picks again, Matt, we could be here next Sunday tilting because I think this is a Stroud blow up spot. Denver also, what did they get killed by against that Miami game where they gave up 70? Obviously, it's a little bit of a revenge game for the defensive coordinator, but motion, a lot of motion in that game. It runs over 20 motion plays a game. Houston, he's using Tank Dell like Tyreek Hill. Houston, he's at home as well, not playing in the mile high air of Denver. Houston. So I would say if you're going to attack Denver and try to get the results, I think this is the week to do it, but your mileage may vary. I hope people are afraid of Denver's defense because I'm going to be playing some CJ Stroud doubles and triples this week, and I hope it hits. Anybody else you want to stand up for here at wide receiver? Adam Thielen, I think another good matchup for him. I kind of worry about him getting too old now, and that's why perhaps we've seen less effectiveness, but good slot matchup against Tampa Bay. They target the slot or allow teams to target the slot over a 50% rate. So Thielen, I think, can maybe have a little bit of a dead cat bounce game here. But anybody else that we haven't talked about, Matt, that you really want to plant a flag for down the home stretch?
Not really. You've got guys like Cooper Kupp that aren't getting ownership, but they're in just bad spots. So really hard to get there unless you're like 150 maxing. I will say a guy that's been really, really productive this year that doesn't seem to get the ownership, just I think based on how he's been in the past and he's expensive, Mike Evans. He's having arguably his best season this year with Baker Mayfield at QB. Like, I'm not buying that. Obviously, Tom Brady's much better than Baker, and Evans is 7,700. He's been a $7,700 receiver this year. So he's like a guy that stands out. He's only projected to be 5.5% owned. We have him optimal about 8% of the time. So like he's coming in with leverage, which is always nice to see on a guy that's that good.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And also Chris Godwin, a game time decision, unless that's changed over the course of a show. But game time decision for him means Trey Palmer coming in, potentially taking some more targets, which it's not going to be the same target share for Godwin. And like Matt mentioned, like Baker's one thing historically through the years has been that he does force the ball downfield a little bit too aggressively. So that's something which has benefited Mike Evans, one of the best years he's had in a while. And I think that's it. And just to close the loop on the turnover conversation, and just so you guys know, where I'm coming from on it, pass deflections lead to interceptions, sacks and pressure lead to turnovers from QBs there. So those are the rates that lead to the thing that lead to turnovers. Turnovers themselves are absolutely meaningless. Like they just kind of occur randomly. Obviously, if it keeps happening over a course of time, anything becomes a bigger sample size. But I would say for you guys out there trying to learn what leads to that stuff, that's what leads to it. Deflections in particular, like deflections are hands on a ball, which means you're closer to an interception. So I would try to target that if you are trying to target things that
also, the other thing about turnovers, they're impossible to predict. So I don't know. Whoever's arguing that Denver's turned people over the last few weeks, okay, they have, but what does that mean for this week?
Yeah, no, it's true. Look, I don't think people are trying to play the Denver D, but just so you guys can get there in terms of the data and stuff that I would view it as, look, your mileage is always going to vary with the stuff. Volatility and randomness in football is higher than any other sport, but the randomness for Denver, again, as somebody who has been investing against Denver for weeks, it might be Skolansky Bucks if this week, but it still thinks at a certain point that Denver's due to give it up, and their metrics haven't changed. They're still a bad team in every facet of football, giving up positive EPAs in every part of the field as well as in the run game. So if you think that's a good defense, I don't know what to tell you. They were bad historically in the first month. I don't think you cure that with some lucky picks, but that's neither here nor there. We got to shout out Owner's Box, though. Owner's Box, of course, doing great things, helping us put on the show and helping you guys do great things as well with your lineup. So go check it out. Of course, the main thing they're doing there is matching your first deposit, minimum of $10, but up to $500. So basically, if you deposit $500, you are getting $500 back on Owner's Box, giving yourself a huge bankroll to go to. And as you can see on the screen, lots of tournaments that are not even close to filling, about less than halfway filled in their big tournament, 20K to first first place in the kickoff tournament. The main thing that you should know about that is that there's a good chance that Owner's Box is putting in more money, which means overlay, than the people are putting in entries. Even if the tournament fills beyond its wildest dreams for the next few hours, it's probably not going to fill. So even in the best case scenario, you're getting reduced rake, and rake is the part that kills you on these sites over and over again. So Owner's Box will help you with that. And then really the main thing is that you're really able to build yourself a roster, a dossier, a career for yourself as a DFS player on a site that just less sharp players are playing on. There's so much time spent on DraftKings and FanDuel for the Osmos of the world. So you mentioned all the other names that we talked about. I have to, again, cite every great DFS player when you name one. But that's the sort of thing that you have to know on Owner's Box. You're going to face less of these guys. You're going to have more overlay, more shots to win more money. And also you get a bonus $5 lightning lineup entry, which I think is one of the more fun concepts out there DFS wise. It's like Tinder. You swipe through lineups, the more you swipe through, the higher your payout increases with that stuff. Doing additional fun things on Owner's Box that don't exist on other sites. So I like playing on other sites besides DraftKings and FanDuel, obviously, but especially DraftKings. For Owner's Box, I would say support them. You must be 18 years or older or the minimum age for permissible use in your jurisdiction. That is a fun thing in an ad read. See the site terms and conditions for the playthrough requirements. And of course, you need help, call 1-800-GAMBLER, but check out Owner's Box for yourself. If you don't need that help, because the help you need is in the form of Owner's Box. I don't think you can do fun things. As I can see by Jordan's face, not supposed to do fun things with the legalese, but check out Owner's Box. And one other quick shout out as well for the lineup generator tool. There's another big one as well. We talk a lot about the Sims on this show. I love the Sims, but I also understand as somebody that does the hours and hours of YouTube content built for Stochastic over the years, as well as my own channel. Lineup generator tool is going to be a lot more affordable for you folks out there that are trying to get in here, that don't want to spend the amount of money that the Sims require. And what it does allow you is a lot of customization. You can see here that Jordan's pulling it up on the screen. You can select all different stack types. You could also boost different teams on the showdown slates, give them a fake over-under that reflects different game scripts. That's the fun of the lineup generator. The data packages also include access to the simulation tool with support for showdown. And you can build up to 10,000 lineups in the Sims in 60 seconds with the contest generator. But the base package for the Sims allow you to build 500 lineups. I don't know, we're talking about this with the lineup generator tool, but a lot of similar processes go into both, and you can see it on the screen. It is very simple here. So if you're building stuff for the spy, if you're not trying to build 20 entry stuff, but even if you are, you could build those things in the lineup generator and make it a lot simpler process for yourself than some of the daunting things that might come with the Sims. So check out the lineup generator, always a great tool to have in your process. And of course, check out some details on Stochastic. And you can see here, a beautiful tool built that Jordan Klein is showing on the screen. I wish that we had Jordan showing it personally on the screen like Vanna White, and he had like one of those touch screens and he can go through. And Jordan, that's the next thing I'm going to ask of you as a producer, is to get one of those input screens. And I think that would bring everybody a lot of joy. I think Loughy would push for that now that he knows I suggested it.
I for one would like it.
Yeah, look, we all want to make Jordan uncomfortable here. That's the goal, though. For what it's worth, guys in the chat, be extra nice to Jordan today, because Jordan's been playing babysitter for one of his pals. If you follow Jordan Klein on Instagram, you might have seen the stories that one of his buddies went a little heavy on margaritas, and Jordan's been on the ball, taking care of that. So there you go. So support Jordan.
Man,
Klein.
I'll tell you what. I swear I looked over 1 minute ago and it was 9:33, and now it's 9:50. This show goes by so fast.
Yeah, we have a lot of fun here. I enjoy doing the show with Matt every week. Hopefully you guys enjoy this process as well. But if you didn't, fuck you. But also Loughy's coming up next with Ben Rasa. So, but if you did enjoy this process, please hit the like button down below. We are here every Sunday at 9 a.m. Doing the best we can to give you guys the first look here. And of course, the deeper dive will go game by game for you. Live before lock will give you guys all the details you need last minute as well. So check those shows coming up here on the same link. Don't have to go anywhere. It'll be there for you. Let's talk about the QBs here. Obviously, we've kind of talked about some of these guys through the lens of their stacks and all that. The top projected owned QB right now, Matt, is Russell Wilson. I got to tell you, Russ, I don't think he's crested past 20 fantasy points on the year. I'm just saying that out of my ass. I've not looked it up recently, but I'm pretty sure that's the case. If he is, he hasn't crested over 30. So let's move the bar there. But Russ going to be chalk in this spot potentially. I don't love the stacks. I don't love Russ. If I'm going to go to a cheap stack that I don't believe in, I'm going to go to Kenny Pickett. But for Russ here, he's the chalk. What are you doing with Denver stacks?
I think I like them a little bit more than you. Like, I like them over Pittsburgh. You seem to like Pittsburgh significantly more than me. I get it. It's the matchup against Arizona. They looked better last week. He did go over 30 once, week 2 against Washington. So it doesn't even matter. He's gone over 21 other time. You're not playing him for the upside here. To be honest, I'm just going to say neither. Like, I get Wilson here because he's priced efficiently. He's in a good spot. I have a hard time playing him as like the highest owned quarterback on the slate. Certainly if I were multi-entering, I'd have some Russell Wilson, but I think I'm playing 3 lineups today. Not sure I'm going to use him knowing that he's the highest owned guy here. Now, that could change if I decide I start liking Sutton and Judy more and just play more of Denver. But I'm certainly probably more off of Wilson than the field. I will say it's a little bit of a weaker QB slate than we normally have, just because no Lamar Jackson, no Josh Allen, no Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, that's true. It's interesting because like the skill positions I think are loaded, but
same.
Yeah, pure QB is not the most fun. And Russ, I get people are going there. I'm sure he allows you to afford. If I had to guess based on this ownership, I would think that the Sims and the ownership are expecting Russ plus Zach Moss, maybe plus Tua. I don't know, it's gonna be plus Tyreek and McCaffrey, and then you're getting cheap Cortland Sutton or cheap Judy, maybe with Troutman at 2,900. I think that Russ stacks are going to be the way that people afford the entire construction. So I think Russ is more of a vessel for how people are going to try to build lineups than a play that people like. And to Russ's credit, like he's been a better runner than I would have thought this year. Is running almost 5 times a game, including 1.1 in the red zone. Also a pretty high EPA per rush. A 0.47 EPA per rush is actually very good for a QB. But he's just not a great passer. Like it's a lot of check down bullshit. It's a Sean Payton offense. It's not the most exciting to go to. So for me as a stack, I don't think it's a fun one. I'd rather save some money and go to Pickett if I'm going to play that crappy QB. But that's me. Tua is at number 2 though, Matt. I like Tua. The lack of rushing upside makes it a little bit tough. I think CJ Stroud's a little more appealing to me at that price point, but I think if you're going to Tua, it's got to be like a QB plus 2 at a minimum, probably a QB plus 3 to make me feel comfortable where he's hitting that full ceiling outcome of maybe 4 or 5 pass TDs. How do you handle Tua at 7,900 and him projected to be about 10% owned?
I don't think I like the expensive quarterbacks as much as you do, mainly him and Stroud. They have some small optimal percentages. Now, it doesn't really matter. Their upside is still higher than most guys on the slate. I would probably play Stroud over Tua just because I think that Denver-Houston game has a lot higher of a chance of being like back and forth than Washington scoring on Miami. I think Miami's D is pretty good. I agree. It's really hard to roster Tua and his weapons here. That's probably why he's not like as high owned, but he's still getting close to 10% owned. That's going to be a pass for me. The one guy that I was expecting to be the highest owned guy in the slate that I've heard a lot of talk about is Brock Purdy. I think you could end up seeing him and Wilson like with very similar ownership levels.
Yeah, no, I agree. I like Brock Purdy in the spot. Again, the Philadelphia defense, like we talked about, I'm a little bit afraid of the front 4. Do get good pressure overall in the year. And actually, I'll cite those metrics really fast. So I'm not just completely talking out of my butt. But I think the spot for Brock Purdy to me is a pretty strong one in a game that's competitive, as we talked about. Some alternate market supporting the totals going over. Philadelphia defense on the year, getting pressure at a 25% clip, but only blitzing at 23%. So that does mean they're generating more pressure with just the linemen than you'd expect. But they are weak out wide, definitely weak out of the slot as well. So Brock Purdy can get there. And again, it's just a 25-point implied total on the road for the Niners. It's not anything to sneeze at going against Philly. So I agree with you on Brock Purdy. I'm with that. CJ Stroud, we talked about as well. I do like the Stroud stacks, tough price point, but I think it's there. The cheap price point play for me would be Kenny Pickett, as I've talked about. Just matchup against Arizona is too good. I'm willing to buy in the hopes that this offense is new, even though I don't think it's new. Do not love the matchup for Pat Freiermuth, though, for what it's worth. Arizona on the year, allowing the lowest target rate to tight ends, under 8% on the year. So I think it could be a good spot to get Deontay Johnson and Pickens going potentially. Anybody else you want to make a stand for here, Matt, so we can cover tight ends very quickly?
One guy that I like, and kind of doing this show has made me like this game more and more, Jared Goff. So I know he hasn't been great recently, but one thing I really like to see is when a guy who, from the eye test looks like he's really struggling, Goff still ended up with like 25 fantasy points last week. I know some of that was in garbage time, but still 25 points is 25 points. I love it when, for example, Detroit today has like the 5th highest top stack percentage on the board. Goff's getting like the 10th highest ownership amongst quarterbacks because of his price point. I really like the idea of going to Goff here on a contrarian level. He's more expensive than the Russell Wilsons of the world, so he's not going to get ownership, but I think you could see them play really well here with 10 days off against the defense missing its best defensive back. Give me Goff as that guy.
And also Derek Carr in that same game as well. Sim-wise coming up a good amount, 16% for him. Derek Carr, the stack gets a little bit easier this week. Again, I think Rashid Shaheed, has he been officially rolled out? I don't think he's going to play, but has he been officially?
So that brings in A.T. Perry, who we didn't even talk about. You mentioned it though. 3,300, yeah. We talked when you mentioned it with Elijah Moore, like there's a few guys in that group that you could make cases for. He's one of them.
Yeah, Carr has some cheap stacks you can go to, also some high value stacks. Olave, again, was going nuts last week in that first half before getting the concussion. So some Derek Carr logic here that's not looking like it's reflected ownership-wise. Tight ends, let's hit on really fast. I have to say, again, so we talked about we love running backs, I love wide receivers this week. Tight ends, this might be the worst week ever, but Matt, you could take some victory laps because David Njoku is the chalk tight end this week. Joe Flacco, I think, could be a little bit less tight end reliant, though he did target them quite a bit on the Jets as well, but he can get the ball downfield. Still think that Njoku is a perfectly fine play, even if he's not quite the same play as DTR and Philip Walker, PJ Walker have made him be the last month or so. But Njoku at 15%, where are you going to land with your ownership? Because if you're not above it, you are a fake Browns fan, I have to say.
Yeah, tight end's pretty easy for me. I'm with you. It sucks. It's not a good position, but it's a pretty easy position. Njoku looks really good at 4,100. I'm also with you that he doesn't look as good as he has the past 2 weeks, because a big part of why I was on him was just DTR going to the tight end over and over again. I mean, he had 15 targets 2 weeks ago with a bunch of drops. He saw a bunch again last week. So I like Njoku, not quite as much as I have the past couple weeks. Brevin Jordan looks like, to me, right there with Zach Moss, is one of the best plays on the slate. 2,500 tight end on a weak position today. You know, he's going to get a lot of the reps with Dalton Schultz out. There's been a lot of coach speak talking about how CJ Stroud likes him. Sure, he's liable to put up a 0 here because it's Brevin Jordan, but he also could, I don't want to say break the slate, but put up a score that's needed based on his price point. And then the other guy that's interesting to me, I'm not going to get there, is George Kittle. People like this game a lot, but they want to spend down at tight end, which inherently means that Kittle's ownership will be lower. We know Kittle's really freaking good. He can break any slate he's on. Hard to get there at 6,200, but people won't be there. So Kittle as the contrarian guy, but really it's Njoku and Jordan for me. How about you?
Yeah, I would say based on the Sims right now, I'm getting the most Njoku by a pretty wide margin, getting 38% Njoku, 33% McBride, 15% Jordan. But I'm actually going to move that around a little bit because I agree that going to Kittle, going to Laporta, I think those are the only high dollar tight ends at the ceiling now that we don't have Dalton Schultz on the slate. So I think if you are going to pay up a little bit of tight end, that's really the lever. Like, I think the Kittle argument you made is it. Like, it's not a great matchup against Philly, but there's really 2 tight ends on the slate that can give you 25 to 30. And that's Kittle, I think, and Sam Laporta. And Laporta, even, that might be a little bit of a tough needle for him to thread, but at least it's close enough to get there. But Njoku, McBride.
He's also cheaper too, which helps. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, Laporta isn't uber expensive. I'm with you. Like, I think Kittle's upside is higher, but man, I just talked about Goff. The other thing I love about Laporta is, like, he's the number 2 in my eyes. So makes for an easy stack with Goff, St. Brown, and Laporta.
Yep, I'm with you on that. And I think too, for, one case you can make in particular for Pat Freiermuth, who's going to be here, he's projected for under 5% ownership. I just don't believe that. I think he's going to chip away a little bit the Trey McBride ownership at 4,300. I think people are going to chase Pat Freiermuth because you had that signal last week of Freiermuth getting all the targets. I don't think there's a spot for Freiermuth to get that volume again. We will certainly see, but if I had to guess, I think Freiermuth gets a little bit higher owned. And to me, that makes the 5K guys a little bit more appealing just because I think there's going to be a lot of the field, 41, 43, or 4,900, spending that on Njoku, Freiermuth, or Trey McBride, or they're paying down for Brevin Jordan, but that's how the field should go. Any final words, Matt, here? We have to give the final plugs and yield the floor to the deeper dive and the returning Loughy right after this one.
No, not really. Defense is always a crapshoot. I saw that Tampa Bay was like one of the most negatively leveraged plays on the entire slate. So based on that, I'd probably get off of them. And also, just to go full circle here, the most negative leverage play on the entire slate is Christian McCaffrey. Now, you have to take that with a grain of salt because it is Christian McCaffrey, but it's worth at least looking into a little bit in my mind. That's all I'll say.
A little opportunity cost potentially for Christian McCaffrey there, but make sure to follow Matt, who's got great takes always and does a lot of great job on the shows here on Stokastic. Follow Matt Fantasy Tips, Matt. Follow me at Chris Spags. Check out my show Monday to Friday, 11 a.m. Splash Play Pod. Would really appreciate that because we're so close to 3K subs. And you people right here, you go subscribe right now. You help me out a bunch over there. But of course, check out Loughy and Ben next. Send some love to Loughy. Loughy coming off of a second child, which, as Matt and I can attest, I don't want to get past one personally. So I think for Loughy, the sleep is suffering, the sanity is suffering, but he will do his best to give you guys a great show coming up here. So smash the like button for him and Ben coming up next. Thank you to the great Jordan Klein. I'm pointing towards Jordan, even though you guys can't see him. Thank you to the great Jordan Klein helping us here amidst the chaos. And good luck to you guys. Lucky week 13. If we don't take this down, we hope you do. See you guys soon. Enjoy your weeks. Good luck. Bye.
point. I really
Maybe
have
I'm
no
not
way
glad to be back, Ben.
Yeah. I really can't combat that.
Say it again.
Him that shit.
Oh shit, yeah.
Go ahead. Go live with him just in an empty chair. And then it'll be like he's back and he'll appear. It's like we needed Loughy back so much, we just decided to go to his setup, but he's not actually back.
And you just do the show by
That would
yourself.
be actually hilarious.
You're like talking to a ghost.
Yeah. That would be.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is the NFL Deeper Dive week. Holy shit, man. Week 13. Thanksgiving's over. Hopefully you guys had a great holiday. Been away for a little bit here. Birth of my second child. What a hellacious experience that is, huh? No, it's actually going much better than the first, but we're back, man. Feels great to be back. I missed you guys. I did. We got 10 games, and I'm not sure I wanted to come back on this slate. I mean, this is odd with the whole Dolphins and then Zach Moss and then essentially everything else. So we got the next hour and a half to break it down. But as always, for real, happy to be back with you guys. Glad to have you here. Here we go. Take a single second, atone for your sins here on a Sunday morning. You should be other places right now, but you're not. You're watching the Deeper Dive. The last thing you could do, take a single second, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, help us reach our goals around here, and say hello to Ben Rasa at JazzRazDFS on Twitter. Missed you, man. What's up, brother?
Yeah, I missed you too. I'm glad you're back. Just in time. Talk about this slate. Feeling good. It's a difficult one. So we're gonna get back in the groove. We're gonna talk about what we got going on and see if we can craft up a Millie winning type lineup.
Oh yeah, brother. And thanks to all you guys. Thanks to all you guys in from the sin bin, right, Jordan? Everybody from the sin bin. Yeah, missed you guys. Look, I'll tell you, dude, I was looking at this slate. It was like Tuesday night or something, and the baby's sleeping pretty well, thank God. Because my first one, Jordan, was just a disaster.
No dice.
Right? Which is kind of cool though, because I was saying the Spags before the show, I had no idea what to expect for the first one. So I just assumed that, like, life is hell. And then this one so far, expecting the first experience hasn't been quite, you know what I mean? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
You should going into it with those expectations where the first one was real rough, kind of so far has saved me. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean that's what I do with DFS. I'm just like, all right,
Yeah, right.
It can't go worse than week one. So this is gonna be fine. We're gonna be okay today. No, it's good. You seem refreshed, and like I said, we need it because it's a tricky little slate. I've said this a couple weeks in a row, but I agree. I think it's true once again. Truly a unique one-of-one slate here. I feel like there's a couple of things this week that the Sims and the tools and the slate are giving us that are just a little different than anything I've seen just yet.
Dude, I was surprised running the Sims to not see a lot of Tua, to not see a ton of that game, get a ton of the Zach Moss. Like I'm so tempted to just overload Miami, Washington, and go super underweight on Zach Moss. Like I can't stop thinking about doing that. And you know why? It's so tough though, because Zach Moss gets you the Miami, right?
Tyreek,
Like Tyreek, the Miami double, any Miami you want, really. Zach Moss feels like the key ingredient there. So, like, what if you end up building a lineup that you feel works with those heavy Miami exposures without it? Here, let me put it to you this way. It feels like the absence of Zach Moss in those lineups is enough to be different in and of itself.
I really think this is one of those, we talk about this, of course. It's not just ownership of one player. Like Zach Moss and Tyreek's ownership together, it's going to be one of the strongest correlations just because of the pay down, pay up aspect of it. So it's going to be a fascinating, is it stars and scrubs? Is it more balanced? Where is that leverage point? And I got some stuff here we're going to get into. It's going to be a wild one.
Before we do, one last thing. So now that I have my second child, not that you guys want to hear about this, but you're here. It's second and done, right? That's over.
Yeah.
Gonna catch the snip.
Okay.
Right?
Are you going to be out again? You better.
I told my wife, I said, you just go you got to get your tubes tied. I'm not doing this. She's like, that's shows. She's like, that's a C-section recovery. It's like, well, why didn't you get a C-section? I don't mean that, but I need to know, guys, how bad it is. Like, my brother-in-law almost fainted in the chair. They keep you awake. I mean, this is your manhood, Ben. I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about being fully operational in all other aspects, right? Mm-hmm. I don't need any mistakes happening, but that's a really scary thing. I mean, I think there's, of course, you're not going to equate it with going to war, but when it comes to something like this, it's a scary thought.
Yeah. I mean, I won't even get my wisdom teeth out because I don't want shit getting messed up anywhere. Ben, so I think you know how I feel about it.
Ben DM'd me for 3 straight days, freaking out about getting a cavity filled and telling me that his dentist and his dentist office are probably not real dentists and not real professionals, and that he wasn't going to come back from it alive. This really happened. So I'm asking the wrong person.
They gave me a card with 2 names. The guys' names were like Arthur and Chris, and my dentist was like Julia somebody. And I'm just like, well, who is this? There was only supposed to be 2 dentists. I think I got an imposter dentist. Another story for another time. Yeah, you don't want to be messing around. One oops. You don't get a mulligan and stuff like that.
No. Yeah. You came out, you had like a tiny cavity to get filled. Thought you were going to die. All right, chat's telling me it's not that bad. Quick recovery, not that bad.
Yeah, you'll be
Someone
fine.
said, "Don't do it. You're too young, dude." I'm 36. I don't want to be having a kid at like 40 years old. You know what I mean? I don't want to be doing that. Anyway, let's do it. Let's do it, man. First up, Miami and Washington. By the way, 1,000 likes doable today.
You got 2 kids. It's 1,000 per kid. I think is very reasonable. This is the day where we get 2,000.
All right. I'd say it's a big dog, but we'll do everything. We'll start at 1,000. We'll start at 1K.
Let's just breeze past 500 right now. Let's just get to 500. We'll recover and we'll see where we're at. Let's go. It's go time. Okay. I'm focused.
All right, let's go. Let's hit 500. Appreciate you guys in advance. I know we will do it. All right, dude. Miami and Washington. Yeah, well, 8.5-point favorites on the road. You know, I feel like the season in week 13 for me, you're going to know exactly where I'm going with this, has come full circle because like all best ball throughout the summer, I'm just loading up as much as I can on Miami stacks on Hill, Waddle to all season through long. You and I have been heavy on, not that we're the only ones, obviously, but just Miami versus bad teams has been stellar, right? They don't just win. They don't just cover 14. They win by 40. And then on the other side, I've just talked so often about how bad this Washington secondary is at preventing deep passes. I know Jack Del Rio is gone. I don't know how much of a difference that makes in week 1, but finally they collide. So now it's Miami, who has been notorious for struggling against good teams, crushing bad teams. I know it's going to be a foggy game, but we're not expecting much weather there. And now it's against Washington that's giving up like big games to Tommy DeVito and company. I tell you what, man, I get it. It's chalk. It's by far, I won't say by far, but it's the highest total on the slate. It was north of 50. But I mean, this Miami passing attack, and now you've got Devon Achane back alongside Raheem Mostert. We'll talk about it. There's just, I mean, this team could put up it could put up 40 today. And I guess the question is, do you just go Miami onslaughts, or do you go underweight and hope that a Detroit, or a Houston or one of those games can get you there? Or San Francisco against a suspect secondary for Philly, particularly on third downs. A lot to get into with this game being the first one up.
Yeah, I mean, it's if you tell me I want to get one of the most potent offenses against a defense that has really struggled, I get it. It's easy to do relative to how you thought, or at least how I thought it would be, and that's because of Zach Moss and Jordan and so many other pieces that we'll get to on this slate. But you are weighing opportunity cost, and obviously there are other stacks that grade out pretty well. The other tricky part, and I know you weren't with me on the first look show, was me and Spags. We were talking about this, Tua, it's great for stacks because we know he's not going to give you anything rushing, but it's also difficult that he starts, sometimes 4, 8, 10 points behind some of these cheaper quarterbacks who give you 30 yards and a little touchdown equity on the ground. So I think more people, as they build, are going to go to the Miami one-off, a Washington stack with a Tyreek run back, a Denver stack with a Tyreek or Waddle one-off, things like that. And I don't really fault people. That's kind of so far what I'm getting to as well.
I'm so tempted to go. Like, how popular do you think the Miami doubles are with Tua, Hill, and Waddle? Go ahead.
I don't think that. I think everyone, or at least maybe I should just speak for myself. I wasn't getting a lot of them in the Sims, and I thought basically I was going to do that. Yeah, and I have softened my stance on that just because I didn't need to really force that in the more I built. It's not like you can't do it. It is allocating a ton of salary, and I am worried about the backfield. I am worried with Achane and certainly Mostert. What if it's just like they really consolidate and the stack doesn't have enough upside?
Yeah, and the real tough part about it again is that if you're doing that, because it is possible. I've actually built some lineups that I liked a lot. The problem was building them on paper looks really good. You throw them into a tournament where you're trying to beat a lot of people out and I'm not worried about dupes in this sense, but like just really, really similar builds. How many of those two at double stacks with Hill and Waddle are going to have the Zach Moss, Jalen Waddle, Zach Moss, Rashad? You know what I mean? They're going to look so similar. Probably Brevin Jordan, punt deep. You actually have to do that. There's only so many ways you can get different with that. And that's the issue I keep running into. There are not a lot of ways to get different with that double stack, unless you're just going flat off, leaving the reservation with some wild galaxy brain plays, which likely don't work anyway.
And that's where you start to funnel, past to victory. Do you want to play a giant 3v3 with a couple hundred people? Seems like not the best move. And I think you are dealing with that. It doesn't mean that you just completely wipe it away, but I see so many people that are going to go either the traditional Miami stack and then either bring it back with McLaurin or Logan Thomas. And I get it. But you mentioned some of those other pieces are going to attach, and soon enough you have like a 6-man, it's not a stack, but a 6-man core that is a very obvious build. And I don't think that's my favorite build today.
You know what I was thinking? You'll appreciate this because you and I have done the podcast exclusive all season long. Check it out, by the way, all of our shows in podcast form, including the podcast. It's probably my favorite show of the week, along with this one, but it's 30 minutes. We go in, we use the post-contest simulator to look at all of the winning lineups, not just the Millie, but in the Spy, the Reds, all of the single entry stuff, break down what type of builds are winning this season. Been super enlightening. Yes. And then how we can approach that going forward. One of the builds that we've seen, and I'm not sure I would know as much as I did on what builds are winning and what's working this year if we weren't doing that 30-minute podcast. The running back, wide receiver, no quarterback, right? And maybe here's the problem. Mostert and Devon Achane are not expensive or not cheap at all, right? They're not cheap. But maybe in these large field tournaments, going with like an Achane and a Hill without Tua, and then going maybe cheaper quarterback. I honestly think it's doable. It may seem crazy because the tough part, and this kind of speaks to your, age-old theory of you have to not only get the, where I'm going, you not only have to get the production, but you have to get the volume as well. And that's tough when you're paying as much as you are for Achane or Mostert. But I keep coming back to it because if this team does score 40 points, which is in the cards, it could be a big game for the running backs, but also a big game for one of the receivers, but you didn't want to pay $8K for Tua Tagovailoa. So that is a spot that I've been toying around with, and I might do it in some of these larger field tournaments. Like the play action, the Millie, some of those, it's not the craziest idea.
Definitely not the craziest idea. You already hit on my main reservation. We don't really have clarity in the backfield. So it does up the variance a little bit. There's no argument that they can't coexist. Mostert
they've done
Hill,
it. Hold on. They've done it a lot this season already, just cheaper price points.
Yeah. And Miami, though, has so much firepower. They can get it done even at premium price points. Obviously, Zach Moss and Pittman that's a no-brainer in terms of they can coexist. We know that. It's like 13,000, not even. But for Miami, I'm fine with that. I really am having difficulty with Mostert versus Achane because I don't think anybody knows it. It's kind of a dealer's choice, and one of them could break the run, and that could be the difference.
So then ultimately, how do you play this game? I've told you, I will have some lineups like that only because I think it's going to be unique. Then plus, I have a popular Tyreek Hill. Oh, okay, I have a popular Zach Moss in that lineup too. But now, how many people are going Hill and Achane or Hill and like I think those small little wrinkles can make a huge difference, even if you're on a lot of the other chalky players. So I am interested in that. I will have some, maybe not a ton, but I'm definitely going to get a little bit of that.
Yeah, I think my favorite way to play this has changed. And again, I'm leaning on our tools, which Tyreek is the guy that I really want. It's easy to get him even at a very nosebleed price point. And then other than that, I would be comfortable with any of the big Miami weapons, from Waddle to the backs to a Tua stack. It's a great team to target. Everybody knows that, but Tyreek, to me, and I think end to the field, stands alone as the best Miami player.
I know we spent a lot of time on this game, but I think everybody understands why. What about the Washington side, where it's just, the target share has been spread around to the point where you want to talk about a major headache. Ben, Sam Howell leads the league in passing yards, yet from week to week, you have no clue who it's going to be. Terry McLaurin has largely been a disappointment this year. Curtis Samuel's coming off his best game since like 2019 or something. You still have Jahan Dotson. You have Brian Robinson and Antonio Gibson in the backfield, who are also oftentimes, especially if playing from behind, featured in the passing game. And you have Logan Thomas at tight end. I think they're all viable. The question is, how do you prioritize these pass catchers?
Yeah, this is always another thing where I think it's important to put the context together, because the target share isn't great, but the volume is so high. If you get 18% of his targets, it's a shitload of targets. And McLaurin he's getting a lot of work. It's just not working right now. Another 11 targets against Dallas, and he had 4 catches for 50 yards. Like, I've been really happy with the volume McLaurin's getting. I've just been upset with the results. So I think this is a team you can definitely look to. I do have some Howell. McLaurin and Logan Thomas would probably be the 2 guys that I would gravitate towards the most. Curtis Samuel maybe as the 3rd. I'm not going to the backfield. I just think that game script wise, it's not the right formula for what I want here. So I kept it pretty simple. I think Washington is playable. McLaurin is probably my favorite one-off, but Howell with his volume, 40-plus attempts, there's plenty of room for a couple of Washington pass catchers to get there.
It's crazy, man. Terry McLaurin is – this blows my mind. He's 15th in targets this year.
Yeah.
Among everyone. I'm including every position, tight ends, right? 15th in targets. But – 63% receptions on those. It's tough. 2 touchdowns. The volume has been there for Terry McLaurin almost every week, and he just can't get it done. Also, that defense for Miami on the secondary, they're healthy again. So it's not exactly as easy a matchup as it was earlier in the season. But here, for me, Ben, if you're talking like, all right, well, I have $4,100 left, I have no problem going to a Curtis Samuel. It's a 49.5 point total game. I don't have an issue with any of these guys, but these are more one-offs to me. I don't know how. Here's the one advantage to stacking Washington. If you double stack Sam Howell and you get it right, you've got a really cheap stack that worked out. That's the advantage. You have a really cheap. I know Sam Howell isn't minimum salary, like his prices come up, but as far as pass catchers go, from even McLaurin, but Dotson, Curtis Samuel, Logan Thomas, all of those guys are cheap. If you happen to get 2 of them right in a double, you don't need a crazy big game from them. And now you've opened everything up. You almost certainly have Tyreek Hill or one of those guys on the other side of this game too.
Yeah, that's where it's a super fascinating. I'm not saying that this is my preferred build, but if you stack Washington with no run back, I think you'll be extremely unique. Extremely unique.
Yeah,
it's hard to advocate that there's not a Dolphin that you want attached. But even if you don't stack with Tyreek, I think Tyreek is going to be overwhelmingly the bring back on Washington stacks. And I think he should be. But again, if you're talking about these gigantic tournaments, How often is someone going to stack up Washington with no Miami run back?
Favorite way to play this game?
It's to, it's very generic. It's to target Tyreek. And if you want to get to Washington, McLaurin is my favorite one-off. And the Howell stack, you mentioned 3 guys that I think you could have a skinny, a +2, or even a +3 if you wanted to go onslaught. And all of them are playable with these price points.
Okay. Would you stack Tua with a running back and a receiver? That's the last question. Because that could get you a little bit different.
So I think you could do it. I'm not worried about the there's not enough production to go around. I worry about the salary. It's too much salary for me.
Okay. All right. Arizona, Pittsburgh. 41-point total is pretty high for these two terrible football teams, but here we are. The Cardinals, 6.5-point dogs on the road. Marquise Brown, Trey McBride, they're expected to play. Michael Wilson's out again, so that raises the question, do we consider any Greg Dortch in these expensive stacks? Coming off, I think, 17 targets combined over his last 2 games, a red zone target in each, a touchdown the other week. So there are some questions here about Arizona. Trey McBride has been heavily featured. Zach Ertz is no longer with them. Marquise Brown, he's still, their best option. But, it's in Pittsburgh. They're touchdown dogs. They're likely going to have to throw in this game, but it's not exactly the easiest matchup either. How do you approach the Arizona Cardinals?
Yeah, it's a good question. The Arizona Cardinals. So you weren't on the show last week. They cost me a boatload. Just everything they did. Just a frustrating game. They played no defense. McBride wasn't terrible, but he wasn't great either. So you've got a team that's got banged up weapons on the outside. A tough matchup in Pittsburgh. I don't really like this spot a ton. I'll be interested to see what you have to say. I don't trust the Cardinals. Again, they're about a touchdown underdog. And there's just quarterbacks above and below Kyler that I have more interest in. He had a whopping 1 rush for 2 yards last week. Good job on that strategy. I don't really understand. And his weapons are banged up. So I think there's too many pay down options. I think in the past, Rondale Moore and Dortch have factored in because we've been starved for value. That is not the case on the slate. And for that reason, Cardinals on the outside looking in. McBride, he's expensive. He's a good player. Playable, but not my favorite tight end either.
Yeah, I'm not too enthusiastic here either. I mean, look, if you want to just break it down like bare bones, Arizona has a 17-point implied total this week. It's not that high.
No, I can live without that.
Their implied total, for what it's worth, is on par with the Patriots and the Panthers.
Yeah,
so
that's not good company. You don't want to be in that company.
No. Do I hate Trey McBride? No, not at all. Dortch, if you get to a little bit, this is kind of how I see Arizona. If I end up on a little bit of Greg, if the Sims give me a little bit of Dortch or Trey McBride, I'm not going to actively try and remove those players. You know what I mean? Even Marquise Brown, still has big play upside. He can still take the top off of defense, but it's not an easy it's not a great matchup. The Steelers are at home. I'm also in the camp of if I ended up with virtually no Cardinals, I'd have no problem with it. And I'm not forcing them in either. It's a very vanilla take for me, but it's really how I feel about them.
Yeah, it's a team that I honestly don't think we need to spend a ton of time on, in the sense that if you land on one of the playmakers for Arizona, we know that they've got some upside. But I think that on a slate, not that this is a gigantic slate, but we got 20 teams. Cardinals is towards the bottom. I respect Pittsburgh's defense. I don't think it's a great game environment. I think more Cardinals will be in Pickett runbacks than anything else.
And, there might be people that are trying to get skinny stacks here, because I do like some plays from Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah.
But I don't know how necessary that's going to be. Look, I like Jaylen Warren. There were people asking me earlier in the week, oh, you're going to go back to the Jaylen Warren well? Yeah, I mean, you look at the volume. I'm fine with it. Sure, he had a bad game. If he had a bad game where he was phased out of the offense to the point where he had 7 total looks and Najee Harris, had defined himself or redefined himself as the clear bell cow, then I'm looking at this entirely differently, dude. But now you're talking about, he had 16 looks last game, 16 opportunities. now you're going up against an Arizona team that's been gutted by opposing running backs. Jaylen Warren is more heavily featured in the passing game than Najee Harris is. Look, I don't think Najee Harris coming in at half the ownership of Warren is crazy either, because Warren's popular. I just think Warren at 5,400 is a little bit underpriced. And it's not often that you're getting the Pittsburgh Steelers with an implied total sitting around 24 points. I like the backfield. I prefer Warren, but I like Pat Freiermuth. I don't mind George Pickens. I like Deontay Johnson. Honestly, it feels gross because Kenny Pickett getting to 2 touchdown passes is asking a lot, but I'm not stacking that. It's a one-off spot for me, and I'd be very happy to get to plenty of one-offs from the Steelers this week.
Yeah, I mean, Kenny Pickett hasn't – he's got 2 touchdowns total in about 2.5 months, so it's unfortunate, but at the same time, it doesn't get much better than this matchup-wise. My interest is also in the backfield. I'm a little worried. I mean, you could say this with a lot of guys, but I do think that Jaylen Warren – he better not lose a fumble early again. I think that would be a big problem. But at the same time, he gets it going. Both of these guys are going to have healthy opportunities. The pass catchers reasonably priced. Deontay Johnson, assuming that he's engaged and ready to go, he should be out there doing some things at flat 5. Pickens more of a home run threat. I think his floor is lower, maybe a higher ceiling. Freiermuth, I don't really want to get to. I get it. I think he's part of Pickett's stacks, or at least considered in that. Not my favorite one-off. I prefer Njoku, and we'll talk about that game in a bit.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not too worried about the fumbles with Harris because with Warren. He's dynamic enough to where I think it'd be crazy just to stop using him. You know, I don't think you're saying that, but.
No, he lost one last week. You don't want to make a habit of it. For sure.
Yeah. Look, if this were a Bill Belichick team, I'd maybe feel a little bit differently. But Kenny Pickett has 1 2 touchdown game in 24 games as a pro. 1, Ben.
So he's due.
Is he though?
No, he's not. But it is a good matchup. I'm not gonna say it's now or never, but if you're talking about pay down options, this is a cheap stack. You unlock a healthy team total at home.
Sure.
Those are favorable metrics.
Look, let's agree on this. It's the best opportunity he's going to get to do this all season long.
Yeah, there's not going to be many more of this in his career if he can't fix some of this stuff.
I do like Warren though. I don't hate Harris. Like, is the 2 touchdown game in play for Harris? It is. The only issue with that is does it end up being the 2 touchdown game for Derrick Henry last week where he's still not relevant? I don't know. I didn't look at the Millie winning lineup or whatever last week. I clearly
last week was I
had obligations. All I know is that Derrick Henry scored 2 touchdowns and finished with 16 fantasy points.
Yeah, I mean there was a lot out there. We'll talk about Bijan. It got crazy late, but yeah, you're going to be obviously needing touchdowns. He needs to flirt with the bonus. He was a single yard short of it, but I think he's playable. I also prefer Warren, though.
Who's your favorite pass catcher? Obviously, Freiermuth under a new OC, too, coming off a really great game.
It would be Deontay Johnson. I still think when you kind of matrix potential volume and potential upside, he is the guy that, to me, is the most interesting of the bunch.
Agreed. Yeah, and really the most reliable as far as targets go.
That's what I mean. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, hard to get away from that. But yeah, Freiermuth coming off a great game. The problem is he's gone from 2,900 to 4,300 in the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. So would you rather just pay the extra 700 to get to Deontay Johnson?
Yes.
But George Pickens, the last thing I'll say about this, I'm not writing off Pickens just because he hasn't had a good game since September. Only because if the big play, if there's one guy on this team that can have one play that essentially at their price point is almost all you need to get them, in the optimal, it is George Pickens. We know that for sure.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to almost infer that Pickett is going to play well. And of course, Pickens hasn't had explosive games. How can you have explosive games if your quarterback is not doing anything? So if Pickett has a big game, that those yards and potential touchdowns have to go to somebody. And I think Pickens, I mean, we know he would get a major boost if his quarterback has a big game. That's very obvious.
Or even just one good throw.
Yeah, one good throw. I mean, we know that he's in the Shaheed bucket of like, yes. Pickens could have 3 for 112 and a touchdown today.
And you'd be perfectly fine with that at 4,600.
Yeah, that'll work.
Detroit and New Orleans, by the way, crushed 500 likes. So we're on our way. We're almost at 600.
Step 2. Yeah, now we've got mission 2. Can we crack 1,000 before 11 o'clock? Because that'll set us up for the sprint run.
Odds?
I think we're going to do it. I do. I think we're going to get to 2,000, not before 11 o'clock. I just want to be clear. We're going to breeze past 1,000, and then the test will begin.
All right. Atone for your sins here on the Deeper Dive, friends. Show some love. Detroit Lions, New Orleans Saints, 47-point total. Saints are 4.5-point home dogs. Rashid Shaheed's out. Olave is expected to play. People have been losing their minds over the lack of reporting on this, dealing with the concussion. But let's actually start it off with Detroit because, there's a ton of discussion now. A ton of discussion about the Dolphins. Tyreek Hill's super popular. Tua, popular quarterback, expensive but popular quarterback. Funny thing is, though, when you look at the implied totals on this slate, yes, you have Miami at 29, but the Lions are 26.5. So sure, that's a step down, but it's also by far, it's the next closest team. And they're not as popular. So with the Laportas, the Amon-Ra St. Browns, obviously the backfield, kind of a mess, just trying to figure out whether it's going to be Montgomery or whether it's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs. But maybe a team that's going under-owned given the implied total today?
I think so. I mean, this is where I think the shadow of Miami lurks over the entire slate. Like I tried to do this morning where I built what I think is a pretty like simplistic, chalky kind of lineup, Miami, and then I pulled Tyreek and I put in St. Brown. I took my $1,100 and then I started like kind of messing around with it just to transform it slightly. You keep it intact, but St. Brown is obviously still a big time playmaker. And I just think that most people, when they've got the money, they're going to go get Tyreek. And for that reason, I do have interest here. I don't think I have interest in Goff per se, but I would love to get St. Brown on some of my key lineups today. I'm going to really try to do that.
Do you have any? Yeah, and look, I get it. By the way, we've seen Amon-Ra St. Brown in Millie Maker winning lineups multiple times when he was the lowest owned of all the high priced receivers.
100%. Because I still think that I'm not gonna say people aren't used to seeing him up there because we've seen it for a while now, but when I always look at the slate, I never gravitate right to him. It was like Tyreek, Keenan Allen, some of the mid-range. He's in a weird price point to me.
He averages north of 10 targets per game. He catches, unlike Terry McLaurin, everything that's thrown to Amon-Ra St. Brown is caught. Right?
He's a machine.
Yeah. Unlike Chris Olave, unlike Terry McLaurin, unlike Mike Evans, everything that's thrown to him is caught, and he's good after the catch as well. So these are the type of things that are always they're always going to make him viable. Always. He's averaging over 10 targets per game. He's 6 in yards after the catch. Matter of fact, almost 5 yards after the catch per reception. Just good numbers, man. The only receivers that lead him there are like only significant ones are guys like Tyreek Hill and Jamar Chase and such. So yeah, I like St. Brown today. I'm with you. The only thing is, what is that in lieu of Tyreek Hill lineups, or are you going to try and build some stuff where you get them both and get weird elsewhere?
So you could do that. That's where though, like if you do that, honestly, what are the chances that Zach Moss is on that team? It's like 100%.
Yeah, like Moss, Warren, Moss, White, it's just
and you punt tight end, and you probably pay down a quarterback
and defense.
And so I'm not saying I'm opposed to it, but no, the lineups that I've been messing around with just have a St. Brown one-off.
What about St. Brown? Like, what about St. Brown Waddle type lineup?
That's a little more, I think, realistic, where you're trying to capture some Miami exposure. You leverage against Tyreek twice now. because people who play St. Brown are less likely to play Tyreek. If Waddle explodes, Tyreek is less likely to get there. I see that. I see the merit to doing that. Or even you say, you know what, I'm going to roll the dice. Give me St. Brown and Mostert.
Sure. Or Achane.
Yeah.
That'll be unique.
Very different.
Yeah. And the good thing is, like, yes, the backfield situation sucks for Miami because we don't know and they're expensive, but you're at least tethering your contrarian running back play to a team with a 30-point total. You know what I mean? Like, you're still doing that.
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of risk. I feel a little more comfortable saying there's going to be 6 touchdowns for this offense, and I need my guy to try to grab 1 or 2 I hope this team scores, and if they do, it'll probably be my guy, but they might not even get on the board.
Somebody asked, would you run Tua naked? No, I would not. I mentioned this before the season began. This is why I got so invested in these Miami stacks for best ball, because if you look at all of the 100 or 300-yard passing games for Miami quarterbacks last year, you can even include, was it Teddy? It was Teddy, right? That before he got hurt, Teddy Bridgewater, Tua and Skylar Thompson, but wasn't Teddy the backup, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Even in the one he had, I think they had like 5 combined 300-yard games. In those 5, Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle had 9 100-yard games. So there was only one of those 5 games where both of them didn't have 100 yards. If you're talking DraftKings, you get the 300-yard bonus, but you also get the 100-yard bonuses. That's why, to me, I'd rather just double stack Tua and live with the results and get weird elsewhere, or I would rather just get weird with Miami without stacking them as a single. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I feel the same way. I think that's not a route that I'm really looking to explore with Tua.
Okay. Hey, how about New Orleans? The Sims do tend to like.
Here we go.
Look, man, it's hard to argue with the Sims tool when people have won milli makers on it. And
they won me over. I got Derek Carr line. I'm staring at him right in the face.
That's what I'm saying. How are you gonna argue with that when they've won people millions of dollars like this month? Well, last month, you know?
Yeah. Well, this month is 2 days old. Let's give it a Sunday and we'll see what we can do in December.
Maybe it'll be you.
Maybe after the leak I had last week, it should be me. Derek Carr.
God, I wish you didn't think I was radio silent just so I could experience your tilt.
Oh my God. I've had some bad ones that was up there. Anyway.
I love you. And I'm not trying to laugh at you but
you can laugh right at me. Go ahead.
No, because I get it. I'm only laughing because I understand it wholeheartly. Understand that type of pain. And then you're getting like text from people talking.
Oh, I was getting the text. I just mute it.
I just mute it. I mute all the text. Like, I don't want to hear. I don't need to hear
my number.
I don't want to hear about everyone else's struggles when mine are just horrible, you know?
Oh, I know.
Anyway, New Orleans with Michael Thomas on the IR, Rashid Shaheed out, Chris Olave expected to play.
Yep. And it should be, it's a concussion. So it's not like, oh, he could be limited. He should be good to go. Carr, great.
Until the next concussion.
Yeah. It's always something with him, but he's just been outstanding at times. He's had glimpses of it. Healthy target share. It should only increase. I get it. I get the New Orleans stack. Certainly A.T. Perry is a name you're going to hear a lot today. He grades out extremely well. And I get it. He's a reasonable pay down option. I still think, we know what we're getting with a guy that's unproven in the sense that we don't know what we're getting. It's going to be one of those situations. And I also think you could incorporate a Jawan Johnson into your stacks. The trickiest guy for me, I don't know what to do with Kamara. I'll be honest. We know that he can catch the ball. That's stating the obvious. Right now, my stacks of New Orleans are confined to the wide receivers and tight ends. I'm a little unknown with like if I should press it with Kamara or the opportunity cost of running back is too great to get him on the slate.
Yeah, that's a tough one. If Olave was out, Kamara would be my highest owned player probably.
Yeah, that would change everything. But in this situation, I don't know how big of a boost it is to Kamara, if any.
I don't know either. What I'm saying is, this is a guy that is frequently targeted. He has multiple 14 target games this year. If you took Olave off and you're relying on A.T. Perry and Juwan Johnson, it just makes sense that Alvin Kamara becomes the focal point of an offense, right? But Chris Olave is still a good receiver. It's not his fault.
A real top end receiver.
Yeah, it's not his fault that the ball. Now, don't get me wrong. Chris Olave has had some boneheaded, lazy plays this year. There's no doubt about that. We've seen it. But he's still good. He's still a huge upgrade over whoever else you would decide to put in there in his absence, right? So
it's undeniable.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I like Kamara. It's a 47.5 point total game. It's the second highest on the slate. It's possible Detroit goes up early. They're in a dome. We've seen them do it plenty of times this season. Kamara then I think becomes even more valuable, right? But I'm not prioritizing it. And one of the reasons is like prioritizing Kamara. Well, if nothing else, Ben, it would make your team look pretty unique. Not to say he's not going to be owned. I'm not saying that at all. But I just think people are going to absolutely love paying down for a running back today.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that New Orleans is certainly a team I want to get over on. And I'm just going to mix and match from Olave to Perry to Johnson, and maybe I'll work in a little Kamara. I think this is just a really good spot for them. I don't trust their quarterback, but random chance. He's got every weapon imaginable. Just get it done, get some production. We'll be okay.
Okay. So we are stacking.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, they graded out when I ran my sims, and obviously I run them again after the show and tweak. I was like, did I put on some filter where I only have Derek Carr? Because he was all over some of the best projected ROI. And again, we've seen the results. I'm not someone that is just, okay, let me just, no matter what it says, like, no, I use my intuition as well, but I absolutely am not going to deny that the Saints are in a good spot.
I mean, really at this point, the only thing that truly sucks, the only thing that really sucks is not having him guaranteed to be on the field in the red zone.
That's part of the problem with New Orleans. We've talked about it all year, that Taysom Hill is going to get opportunities at the most important points where TD equity is sky high. They bring in another guy at times, and that is brutal. But I don't think it really impacts the potential ceiling. You just need to dodge it, and it is what it is. I'm still going to roll the dice with New Orleans and hope that we don't see Taysom Hill factor in.
Okay, fair enough. Favorite plays from the Saints and from the Lions, and also stacking this game. I assume you're going to have plenty of St. Brown run backs then.
I'm going to try. I think it makes a lot of sense. My favorite play is St. Brown on that side. And then, Olave and the pay downs from Perry to Juwan Johnson, I think is really, really the way that I want to utilize this game. And I think it's a good one. If
the Dolphins Commanders game is underwhelming, and it could be underwhelming, but it doesn't have to be a 17-10 game to be underwhelming, right? Like given the ownership on some of these guys, particularly Tyreek Hill and them, it could be, 24-10 and underwhelmed. If that is the case, this feels like one of the prime opportunities. Detroit, New Orleans in the dome, 47 point total.
Oh, yeah.
This feels like one of the games that you would want to have exposure to if that Miami Washington game doesn't get the job done.
Totally agree. I think this has a chance to be the best game of the entire slate.
Okay. Yeah. And it's kind of underowned given the total on a weird slate. I mean, we have a 33 point total game we're going to talk about.
Yeah, there's a couple of throwaways in here.
Yeah, there's some bad ones. Anyway, one thing you shouldn't throw away is money. And right now on Owner's Box, 35% filled, Ben. We have about 2 hours until lock. 100K kickoff, 20K up top is 35% filled. You already know, guys, the link's in the description and in the chat. You sign up to $500 first match deposit bonus. Also, they ice the cake a little bit, right? They give you a $5 Lightning Lineups ticket for free on top of your sign up. They give you another $5 entry into any DFS contest. If you're not there yet, I think you could make the argument that there's a lot of reasons you should, if nothing else, check it out and see for yourself. Up to a $500 first match deposit bonus. The multiple tickets they give you just for signing up, and super flex contests. Very cool. Meaning you never have to play it. We don't have to worry about punting a defense or getting burned by a $4,500 defense that we faded. You can flex in quarterbacks and super flex. In weird games, you could stack the entirety of the game, unlike anywhere else. But the biggest, like, there's forget about the deposit, the tickets, forget about the super flex. It just comes down to the overlay, Ben. And if you're week over week going to continue to see these contests not fill and have dead money, and if nothing else, reduced rake or no rake at all, you jump on it. You just jump on it.
Of course. And we've seen, I was scanning chat before we got on. I saw a couple of people say, I finally signed up over at Owner's Box, and they're working their way through it. And just make sure, again, you take advantage of the deposit match, take advantage of the tools, because it's an unsolved format, one that I think actually is pretty sneaky with some of the lineup construction you can make. And you mentioned the most important thing. Why would you want to play against 7,000 people if you could play against 5,000 with 2,000 just dead lineups? I mean, that's just simple opportunity. So hopefully we see more. We've seen some really big hits over there, and I hope we see a couple more today.
Big hits from our subs, from our viewers. Yeah. It's been awesome. And if you used like the Black Friday or the Thanksgiving sale or whatever, all the milli sale, don't forget, we have Owner's Box for the contest generator, for the Sims, ownership projections, all of that stuff. But yeah, links in the description. You don't need a promo code if it asks. The link will get you there, get you everything you need. Turn your ad blocker off if you have one, though, and then you can turn it right back on for that link. But yeah, click the link and you're in, baby. Get that deposit bonus. Take advantage of the overlay. Go win some money and hit us up when you do. We love seeing that stuff. All right, next game here before we do, super chat from Kevin Watkins, $20. Thanks, brother. Finally, thanks to all of you longtime listener. Use the tools and game theory. Took first in the Seattle-Dallas play action. Guess I should have had the stochastic logo. All good, brother. That's awesome. Congrats, Loughy. Yeah, thanks, man. All of our tools in the description. You guys already know that. And in chat, Sims tool, lineup generator. If you're playing on a lighter budget, lighter bankroll, but love this stuff, lineup generator, Sims Lite, basically. But all that stuff down there, if you want to get in on the action. Tools have been crushing lately, and we're happy to see it. But congrats, Kevin. That's awesome, man. Chargers, New England Patriots. All right, so the Patriots are starting Bailey Zappi. This offense is outright broken, man. They're broken, totally broken. Ramondre Stevenson's still getting ownership, though. I actually want to start on this side, then we can make our way over to the Chargers. I mean, outside of Stevenson, who do you get to? How do you get to the Patriots?
I won't. So it's pretty simple for me. No, just absolutely not. Douglas was doing some things, and then he got clotheslined. I don't know if you saw that. And it's just Stevenson. Like, if you want to be a hero and go to like Monte Parker or something, I guess, if you're not feeling the Perry situation. But for me, this is one guy. I really liked Stevenson last week. He was good. I thought he should have been even better. He was 2 yards short in a game that should have went to overtime. He had 5 targets, converted every one into a reception. I like Stevenson at flat 6 today.
I do too. And look, you mentioned Parker. I don't think it's crazy. Okay. I don't think it's nuts. Granted, Bailey Zappi has a passing yard prop of 177.5 last time I looked. It's not good, but
somewhere.
Yeah, look, Parker's the dead min. They could be playing from behind. He's 3,300 on DraftKings. This isn't a ringing endorsement, as you can hear from the tone of my voice. But if I have $3,300 left, Ben, and the rest of the team is loaded with studs, and it's like, all right, I got to play Parker. I'm going to hope that he gets 7 targets today. You could do worse.
Yeah. He's playable. I want to stress he's playable. It's just, it's a team. It's the complete opposite of what we were talking about with Miami, where you're hoping to grab some of the many touchdowns and they could go to 10 guys. Here, you're hoping to grab possibly the lone touchdown.
Exactly. Yeah. But, you know, in the same breath, you could have 6 for 80 without a touchdown for Parker. And at that price point, if the rest of your lineup looks good, it's certainly not going to be the reason you lose anything.
No, you just want to make sure that it's just there are ways where he has like 2 for 16, obviously.
Oh yeah. That's why he's $3,300.
Correct.
Yeah. It's Stevenson. And then, like I said, I'll sprinkle some Parker in lineups where I think I need him. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's it. Any Patriots defense, they're 2,400. You want to play Patriots defense, by all means, go for it. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't care about that. I don't think I'm going to get them, but if I did, I wouldn't care.
No, you'll play any defense.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. What about the Chargers? So, it looked like not Guyton. It looked like Quentin Johnston might have been possibly out, but he's playing. So now it's Keenan Allen, leads the league in targets, on the road against a lifeless Patriots team, and it's Austin Eckler. And then outside of that, you've gotten yourself into a situation where, all right, so if I'm not going Eckler, who I think is kind of tough to get to, but get your thoughts on this one. We have him right now from an ownership standpoint over at Stochastic. Jordan, you can pull our ownership tools up. We have Eckler at 5% owned. So that's the only thing that maybe gets the gears turning in my head a little bit. Aside from that, nothing going to Everett, nothing going to Guyton, nothing going to Donald Parham. It's Keenan Allen, who is the lone guy on this team getting a lot of ownership. And outside of that, pretty quiet on the ownership front for the Chargers.
I think it should be, to be honest. I don't have a lot to say on this team. The one thing that I think has been interesting is Justin Herbert has been very mobile in the last couple games, shockingly mobile. 73 and 47 rushing yards. That's really atypical for him. If he continues to do that, that's really going to make his ceiling that much better. I still think, though, for the most part, it's probably Keenan Allen or pass as a one-off than anything else. I'd rather play Kamara than play Eckler. I'm not playing one of like the 8 other guys that's, below them. Keenan Allen's target share is outrageous. It's really crazy. He's averaging like 15 targets a game over the last month. That's all I have from this game is Stevenson on one side, and if I get to Keenan Allen, that's just fine.
All right. I know we're running like a little bit late, but I'm not super concerned because we're covering a lot of the important games in this first hour, right?
We'll be fine.
Yeah, we're good. But are you worried about the weather at all in this game? It gonna be a lot of rain.
Gonna be a lot of rain. It's nasty here, but with everything like that, I'll just say go to, I'm gonna say Odd Chopper and just look at the total and just monitor it. Because if the markets are concerned, then I'm concerned. If the total doesn't change, then I'm not going to change. And right now, I haven't seen anything drastic with that. I don't think it's a huge concern unless the total really crashes.
39 points right now. Chargers, 22-point implied total. Yeah, the reason I asked is, could the rain impact this game to the point where Austin Eckler is just heavily utilized?
I mean, it's possible. It's just, I'm not sure I can pay that for him. He's a good player, of course. It's just, I'd rather go get McCaffrey, get Kamara, pay down at running back. There's a lot of other builds that have me more interested.
I hear you. Also, not a lot of wind either.
Yeah, I'm not, like I said, the weather, I'm not worried about it unless Vegas is.
Me neither. If anything, I'd probably just downgrade like a Devontae Parker, but he's only in the conversation because of how cheap he is anyway. But we saw downpours in Philly between them and the Bills last week and 71 total points, right?
Yeah, how'd that go? Kicking 60-yard field goals to put it in overtime.
Yo, Jake Elliott's a Hall of Fame kicker.
Not to me. He should be cut and possibly jailed. That was awful.
Why? Did you have action from a betting side?
No, I just needed the games to end, and I needed the Patriots game to go overtime, and they missed like a 30-yarder earlier in the day, so that was.
So I assume you didn't need a long Josh Allen drive followed by a Jalen Hurts rushing touchdown?
No, that I needed. Didn't need any of it. I needed the game to end at halftime. That would have been useful.
All right. Is Keenan Allen the only guy from this game you're getting to with Stevenson on the other side?
Yeah, that's it. And I want to be clear. If I need a cheapie, I would consider Parker, just like you.
Okay. Any skinny stacks, or is that just if you get there, fine? Like Stevenson. It's just such an ugly game that I hate having multiple guys is exposed, but I guess it doesn't really matter.
No, I'm not. I think there's a couple playable pieces, and however those are allocated are just fine with me.
Okay. Yeah, it's funny because we actually have Bailey Zappi, our second highest rated bet on Odd Shopper right now. Our second highest rated bet. Granted, it's a market-based approach. You're just trying to pick off the bad lines in the market. especially when you're looking at the true odds of one of these. We have Bailey Zappi under a half a touchdown as our second highest bet, second highest OS rating, 14% EV plus 165 on BetMGM under half a touchdown.
Well, that's good. That means he's most likely going to score a touchdown. No, I'm serious. You said plus, right? Plus 165?
Yes. Yes, exactly. So, but what we all, yeah. And also we have the true odds at plus 133. Pinnacle has it at, oh, actually Penny has it at plus, yeah, I'm sorry. Pinnacle has the under at plus 170. So yes, it would suggest he's more likely to finish with a touchdown. Yeah.
You're getting paid off. If he doesn't, you're going to get obviously that, and that's what betting's all about. You know how I feel about Odd Chopper and our new package and all that. We'll talk about that a little later, but yeah.
Talk about it. We got a bunch of games to go. Tell the people dude, I've been just,
you're involved now. We got everyone involved.
All paternity leave. I've just been hammering Odd Chopper bets, whether I'm sitting on the can, whether I'm walking the dog, whether I'm at my computer, just finding the bets and loading them up like 30 bets a day straight from Odd Chopper because I haven't had time to look at the stats and the games. I'm just pulling them straight from this, dude.
Yeah, man. I mean, listen, the tools have been outstanding. We've seen the results, but if you guys haven't seen, we had a couple different products over there and we said, you know what, enough of this or that. We put them all together. So if you like the community, you've got our Discord. If you like the picks, you're on YouTube watching our videos and you say, I want to know who's Loughy on, who's Ben on, who's Greg on, or whatnot. We've got picks embedded within Odd Chopper from us. And then the most important part, we've got all the tools, the parlay builder, the EV models, the things that really, if you're serious about making some money, that's where you want to be. But it's the best of both worlds right now. We have something for everyone over there. The link, I'm going to put it in chat myself, actually. If you want to
very excited about this.
I couldn't be more excited because I've said so many people that say, I love these tools, but it's isolating. I wish I was in Discord. I'm in Discord and I'm having a blast, but I wish I had the tools. Now you get everything. No matter what you want, it's all under one roof. And it's just such a simple package. Come in for the week, hop in Discord, see what we're about. I have a feeling you're never going to leave.
Love it. All right. Link in the description and chat. Yeah, you'll love it. It changes betting. It changes everything you know about betting and how you do it. It makes it a lot more enjoyable when you're winning. All right, where are we at next? Let's go. Colts, Tennessee. All right. No Jonathan Taylor. There you go. This isn't, is Zach Moss a good value play? I don't want to have that. I'm not interested in that conversation, even remotely. Okay. It's a waste of our time. The question is, more than anything else, how do you approach Zach Moss? Because in expensive lineups, he's going to be the first piece that goes into people's lineups, along with, like you said, a cheap tight end, maybe a cheap tight defense. The question is, how do you approach Zach Moss? Not if he's a good play.
Yeah, I mean, we know that he's going to factor into the slate. I'm supporting it, or kind of taking it in the sense that I'm not going to let him define the slate for me. That's kind of how I take approaches with crazy chalk like this. I don't see a reason to make this like super aggressive stand of, I don't want any Zach Moss. I don't like the spot. That's kind of crazy. If he falls in the end zone, if you get unlucky, or if he just turns out to be a really good play, you're dead. I'm not looking to lock Zach Moss either. I think there's still a lot of builds where I don't need him. So I'm going to have a healthy amount. It looks like he's going to be the most popular player on the slate. And I'm going to have a good, probably in line with the field, maybe plus a little bit. You're going to play him in cash, obviously, but he's just fine for a pay down option. He's an obvious play and he's a good play.
What do you think of the all or nothing approach for Moss?
In terms of taking an aggressive stand one way or another?
Yeah, I know you got into it a little bit, but like, what do you think? Just to drill down this is the most pivotal part of the entire slate. It's Zach Moss.
It doesn't have to be, though, to me.
You don't think so?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay, so explain.
In the sense that, yes, getting him correct is crucial, but it doesn't mean it has to define your day. In the sense, if he's 42% owned and you have about 50%, some lineups will be killed one way or another, but you probably have a chance to survive in advance without him defining it. And for me, I do not have a really strong take. The Sims really like him. I think that's warranted, It's probably why I'll get slightly over. But I don't feel the need to say I'm locking Zach Moss. There are too many running backs that I think opportunity cost wise don't make it that it's that kind of situation. This is not a 3-game slate. So I'm advocating for him, but no, I think there are ways to get away from him. And I wouldn't make an aggressive stand.
All right. So you're kind of straddling the fence on this one.
Yeah, I am. I am. Sometimes you got to do that. And I think for me, this is a situation where I don't have a good read on if I should fade him or jam him. And for that reason, I'll just get a healthy amount.
All right. What about this then? This is why you tune into the deeper dive. We go deep, Ben. By the way, 2000. I need you to start being pessimistic with likes. Your optimism does us no good.
Yeah. I tried this yesterday. I was watching a basketball game and I'm just complaining. Up here comes another. Yep, my team shoots 8%. And I said, you know what? I'm gonna stay positive. And you know what happened? It got even worse. And then I switched back immediately. So you're right. I knew the whole time that we were not even gonna break 1,000. So it just shows where my head is at. I tried, Loughy, for your children, but no one listens to me. What can I do?
I appreciate it. I need you to be negative. I need when I ask,
well, like, that won't be difficult.
When I say, like, what are the odds that I was getting to 1,000 likes? You need to say 10-1, you know?
Yeah, so be accurate, you're saying.
No, we'll still hit 1,000 for sure.
Yeah, we'll hit 1,000, maybe. Maybe.
He's back, baby.
I tried, man. I was trying to stay so positive yesterday, and you should have seen these teams.
Being positive is overrated.
99% of the people on the stream are going to say, what the hell is he talking about? If you happen to bet Yale in basketball yesterday, rest assured you'll never see a worse beat ever. Ever. If any of you out there had it in chat, thoughts and prayers.
Thoughts and prayers, babe. Yeah, we'll get to it. We'll get to it. I'm actually thanking everyone in advance for 1,000 because that's a lot. Let me be the positive one. Mike with a $5 super chat. Ben, let's make this simple. Making one lineup. Does it have Moss in it? I want both replies, but got to target Ben on this. Sure. Yeah, I'll give you mine first. I think it totally depends on the format you're playing, first of all. Like if I'm playing a smaller field single entry, probably has Moss. If I'm playing one lineup in the millie, like one lineup in a $20 entry millie, I have no problem not having Zach Moss in that lineup.
Yeah, if I was playing, we had a question. It was kind of a follow-up to that. If I knew that Moss was like 80% owned or 100% owned and it was a normal tournament structure, I would not play him. I would just say I probably get burned here, but the upside is huge if he gets hurt, if he just has a bad game.
I think he's going to be higher than everywhere has him projected.
That makes it more lucrative to potentially pivot then.
Yeah.
If I was playing one lineup, though, I would play him. Yes.
You would be my goal. So here was my final question on Zach Moss. Are there ways to get different, unique with Zach Moss lineups in your head that you've already kind of cooked up?
Yeah, I think I don't want to target one player because I think that's a little aggressive, but the point still stands. Yeah, don't play him with Tyreek. That's probably step one. But more so what I'm saying is most people are tapping into Zach Moss to pay up at skill position, whether it's running back or wide receiver. I always say hybrid balanced. And what I mean by that is like, what if you have Zach Moss and then like a bunch of 7K guys around him? That's a build that I think is pretty, Devontae Smith, Waddle, those types, George Kittle at tight end, players that aren't 9K, but they're elite players and you get a bunch of them and then you have a pay down at running back. I don't think people will do that.
I like that. It is funny too, man, because Zach Moss, it's a tough matchup against that Titans front, but earlier in the season, he gutted them. Remember that? Destroyed them.
Oh, I remember.
23 for 165, 2 touchdowns, 2 for 30, 36.5 fantasy points for Zach Moss that day. It's crazy. How are you approaching the passing game? Pittman, Minshew, Downs?
Yeah, I'll save some time here. They're playable. I think you can stack up Minshew with Pittman and Downs. You could play Pittman as a one-off. You could play Pittman with Moss. All of it's in play. Colts are a simple team to break down. That's all I have for them.
Okay. Yeah, I like them too. All of them. And I'm not opposed to the Pittman, Moss, no Minshew lineups whatsoever.
Yep.
Would you go Moss, Downs without Minshew?
I mean, you could. It's not just because I don't think I'll have much of that, but
Me neither.
No.
Yeah, Pittman. It's Pittman and Moss, the two top options here, and then everybody else, like the downs, playable, but not exciting at all. How about Tennessee? See, Tennessee for me, man. By the way, Treylon Burks questionable. Kind of who cares at this point? I think we've seen enough of Will Levis. I know you probably still have some hopes, but for the current 2023 campaign, I believe I've seen enough personally. Derrick Henry, man, he's lost 5 steps at this point. Found the end zone twice last week and still couldn't really get it done. It's tough. You want to go to some Derrick Henry at 68, some DeAndre Hopkins at 6,100. Fine. Chig is 3,100. Chig might be my favorite option for this team just because he's dirt cheap at a bad position.
There's not much for me for Tennessee. DeAndre Hopkins, he's one of those mid-range players I just alluded to. He's just kind of a solid tournament receiver, but he didn't stand out to me either. I'm not getting to the stack. I'm not getting to Henry. I have nothing else to say on the Titans. Don't like them this week.
Okay. So it's Zach Moss and Pittman essentially from this game?
Yeah, or Minshew stacks. I'm fine with that.
Okay. Let's move it on then to Denver and Houston. Denver's 3-point dog in Houston. Dalton Schultz is out for Houston. Tank Dell, Noah Brown expected to play. With Denver, though, it's tough because as Cortland Sutton, this guy, he might be the best end zone. Like as far as production in the end zone goes, Cortland Sutton, I mentioned this a few weeks back, and then he ripped off another couple of them. He's been a monster at catching touchdowns in the end zone. He's like 8 touchdowns on 10 red zone or end zone targets this year. Something ridiculous. All 8 of his touchdowns have come in the end zone. Not saying he ran into the end zone. This isn't some John Madden shtick here. I'm saying all 8 of his touchdowns have been caught in the end zone. It's pretty wild. The problem I have hit with him, and I've voiced this opinion to you many times before, he has way too many games where he completely salvages with the touchdown, and it's still like an 18 fantasy point game on 4 or 5 or 6 targets. He's not super expensive. It just sucks that you're not getting that type of big workload from Cortland Sutton that you'd hope for. If he even averaged 8 targets per game at 5,400, I'd be all over this, but you need Cortland Sutton to score. If he doesn't score, you're cooked.
Yeah, you need that with Judy as well. And it's a good spot, I think, for Denver. You're going to see Russ Wilson stacks with both of them, one of them. And I'm just fine with that. But it's hard to argue that the volume isn't in the Keenan Allen stratosphere for a guy like Sutton. And I kind of wish it was, because I think there's room for that. So it's a good matchup. I'm getting to these guys on Denver. I'm getting to Javonte Williams in the backfield as well. Another team where I think it's pretty simple. You've got 4 guys, 2 receivers, 1 running back, and Russ. And I don't mind any combination from one-offs to full stacks.
Okay. Kick's good said, I don't think Henry's lost a step. He's just getting hit as soon as he gets the ball. That's true. But I still think he's not the same Derrick Henry as old. When you put that many miles on a guy, when there's that much tread on those tires, eventually you're going to wear down. I think it's a combination of both. But I don't know, man. I don't like Denver all that much. Maybe you can convince me otherwise. The problem I'm having is, on one hand, hey, pretty high total, pretty close spread, 3-point spread, right? I wouldn't be shocked if this game ends up going under. I've been, kind of banging the drum for this Denver defense ever since, they started to put things together a couple weeks following that 70-point disastrous gutting from the Miami Dolphins. They're pretty popular though. Like Wilson, 11%. Sutton, 14%. Javonte Williams, 5,700. He's 18%. I don't mind that, but this team is more popular than I expected. That's what I'll tell you.
I think it's just because Houston's produced a lot of just really good games, shootouts, and Denver's playing better. So they're in the discussion. They're right next to Carr, right next to Minshew. You want to flirt with 30 attempts though. Like 24 passes is not what you're looking for. And that could very, very easily happen.
You know what it is for me? Denver stacks are gross. Every week. How close has a Russell Wilson stack gotten to winning a tournament all season long? I suppose I suppose once or twice, right? Like against Washington probably was okay.
Yeah, I mean, they're playing. I don't know. It's hard to. I don't really care. I know what you're saying. I know they can do it, and that's all I really care about is, is it there? And it is there. It's just you need the right formula, and maybe Houston produces that.
Holy shit, man. Russell Wilson passing yards since week 6. 95, 194, 114, 193, 259, 134. All right, I'll stop. Okay.
We're gonna be here till 12:30 with you and your Russ Wilson takes.
I'll stop.
No, I get it. They're winning. That's the concerning part. I know that seems counterintuitive. They're winning, and they have no incentive to change it. You know what I mean?
Look, I've been higher on the Broncos as a team.
You have. But
I just, they've been more efficient. Fine. You want to stack? I get it, because Houston, like you said, and it's it's in Houston. You're not getting those bad weather conditions. Fine with me. What about the CJ Stroud stacks? Because Denver's defense has picked it up lately.
Yeah, I don't like that as much. Stroud, again, ironically, I think him opening it up and making some mistakes in some ways can help the stack. He's been great. We've seen it time and time again. He scored he had a nice rushing attack last week. I think that's more of an outlier. I'm fine with one of his pass catchers. I don't think I'm going to get to the ground game just because I don't know what to expect there. I think there's a cannibalization, probably more of a one-off, similar. And then you've got Brevin Jordan as a obvious value if you want to punt tight end.
So the Brevin Jordan play is interesting with no Dalton Schultz. And then you have Tank Dell, who's just been purely dominant. Is he 100% healthy? I don't know. Noah Brown, we just have to, at this point, have to assume they are. Should you just be playing a pass catcher from the Colts or from the Texans regardless? Like, should we just have one of them in our lineups because every single week one of them goes off? It sucks because you have to figure out which. I know it's been Tank Dell, I know, but like if and I know Dalton Schultz it feels like every week one of them is out of the rotation, right? So it's hard to get your finger on the pulse of this team.
It's very difficult. Dalton Schultz was rolling and then he regressed. Now he's hurt. Woods wasn't there. Then Brown wasn't there. Nico Collins has had obviously some really good games. He has 20 targets in the last 2, but it's been Tank Dell at the top. I'm fine peppering it in, but I'm also fine not having exposure to Houston in lineups. I don't think it's like, oh, I have to get there. I don't think that's the case at all.
Okay. All right. Well, Atlanta and New York Jets, 33-point total.
You can go to Carolina.
Most preseason totals are lower than this.
I mean, this is just.
I'm sorry, higher than this.
This game shouldn't be played.
It's terrible.
They should just cancel the game.
It's terrible. Breece Hall, you won 30 rushing yards. It sucks. I love Breece Hall, but I mean, at this point, you just can't trust it with Tim Boyle at the helm. And by the way, Manny I think it was Manny had a super chat earlier, free super chat saying, if you get snipped, do you waddle like Jalen Watt? From everyone I've spoken to, yeah, you're waddling around for like 4 days. So you should just do it to see how, just do it.
For solidarity. We'll get a group rate.
Like when I did the Packy chip with Josh.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know what to do with Atlanta and New York. It's the lowest total on the slate by a mile. New York's defense is the only thing that keeps them competitive, and it's the reason these totals are always so low. They have no offense; they're broken, but they still have a good, strong defense. What's the play here? Do you get to anything from either side?
Not really. Atlanta's defense, I think, is fine. Finally, Bijan Robinson had an awesome game. Should have gotten even more. Again, it was incredibly frustrating. He is 9 yards short of a bonus. I think you can bet on his talent blindly, but the Jets defense is still really good. They just don't have a real team. I have nothing to say on this. It's the worst game for a reason.
Jordan, in our sims, are we getting any Jets or Falcons? Because Breece Hall's ownership's not basically nothing. Okay. Breece Hall's ownership is actually higher than I would have anticipated here.
Yeah, I don't see that at all at a deep running back position.
Agreed. Falcons defense is really the only thing pulling anything from the Falcons side. A little bit of Bijan, 5%, 4% Drake London. You know, all of that makes sense. Just getting 4 or 5% of those guys. But by and large, it is a gross game, an absolutely gross game. So the 3,500 plus people watching with us, I think we can spare them the pain and move on to the next one.
Yeah.
Let's talk. Plus, you got Live Before Lock coming up next. Matt Gajewski, Eric Lindquist. If they find it, don't go anywhere. Stick around. They'll take you all the way up to lock. If there's anything you think we missed. Thomas Ryan with a super chat. Should we hit on this real quick?
Absolutely.
5,600 or less flex on draft. I'd have to know who your players were, but I think I don't know about you, Ben. I think there's a ton of good players at 5,600 or less as a flex on DraftKings.
There's a lot. McLaurin would be my favorite, but Jaylen Warren's right there as well.
I don't even think it's crazy if you're large, like to go to a Sam Laporta if you have if you're stacking that game.
Yeah, that's playable too.
Yeah. I don't think Najee's crazy. There's a lot. Downs is fine. Deontay Johnson. But if you're talking right around that range, yeah, Terry McLaurin, Laporta. Who did you say after that?
Just Warren, McLaurin. Yeah, those two stuck out.
Look, I know I've said some disparaging things about the passing offense for Denver, but Cortland Sutton's 5,400. If the game does shoot out, he scores twice. Yeah, it's a nice range. That's not a range you're going to have much trouble getting to at all. Carolina and Tampa Bay. Carolina's getting J.C. Hornback. They're getting some reinforcements on that defense. I actually don't even hate the idea of playing Carolina defense today if you're trying to go cheap. I think that's one of my preferred cheap options at defense. Hayden Hurst is out. Tommy Tremble's not expected to play. Are you just loading up on Ian Thomas?
Oh, yeah, that's right at the top of my list of things to do. Another tough game. You know, I think Rachaad White, obviously, he's been awesome all year. The volume is there. I respect Carolina's defense more than most, but I also, if you're going to get between 15 and 20 touches and a couple of them are targets, you have a really nice floor. They're very content to give him multiple chances on the goal line. Probably my favorite from the game, and that mirrors what the field is going to say. Thielen's regressed, finally been getting that right week after week. Not that he's been popular, but, you know, those prices were crazy, and I'm not planning on really changing that up anytime soon.
I like him today. I like Adam Thielen today. This Bucs secondary, man, they've been way worse than anyone could have imagined. And I know Thielen's coming off of a game where he was only targeted 3 times. But if you go back outside of just last week, even in these games where he's underwhelmed, let's be fair. That pace that he was on weeks 2 through 6, completely unsustainable in this offense. We know that. Okay. Yep. Everybody knows that. But I also think when you look at the past 5 weeks where he is, you know, not winning you a tournament, 11 targets, 6 targets, 10 targets, 11 targets. And then, like I said, last week, only 3 in a terrible game. He still has north of a 25% target share over the last 5 weeks. His price has come down from 7,700 in week 10 to 6,600 this week. This is a game that Carolina could win. I think Thielen at 6,600 is actually a pretty good play.
Okay. I will remove him from the blacklist and at least give it a look. He does feed into what I said, which is that area that's no man's land. That's the DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Smith range. I don't have much from this game, but maybe I will look to see my sim lineups again. And we're going to, as inactives and things come up, everything will be refreshed. You'll be good to go. Ownership just got refreshed pretty recently, actually. We'll see if Thielen weasels his way into any lineups, but I'm not getting to Bryce Young. I'll tell you that much.
Copy paste Dave said, Laffy, say it with me. Panthers O-line stinks. Yeah, I know. There's a lot of bad O-lines out there these days. But we've seen Adam Thielen produce, and
Yeah,
I
he
think
can
at that price.
coexist.
What's that?
Yeah, in some ways, I think the O-line being bad helps Thielen because they got to get the ball out quick, and his ADOT was never his biggest asset.
Yeah. Jamal Parker, congrats, Loughy. Thanks, brother. Appreciate you, man. How long till the Sims update? Soon. We'll get so if we're gonna get the injury report in 3 minutes,
yeah,
then we should get an update shortly after that. No point of really updating like we have if you get early news, but usually it'll be after the injury updates, after the injury reports, the inactives come out in a few minutes at 11:30. Guys on Live Before Lock will have more information on that as well. But yeah, I don't mind dealing. That's the only play from Carolina that I have any interest in. On the Tampa Bay side, I mean, Mike Evans is just good. He's just really good. And he's another one in a similar bucket as like, granted, been far more productive than Terry McLaurin. Don't get me wrong. More productive than Chris Olave. But you also have a quarterback who's not great. You know, Baker Mayfield's been, admirable, I guess you could say, because you didn't expect anything from him. But it's still Baker Mayfield. So it's no surprise that Mike Evans is going to have big target, low reception games. I got to ask you about him, though, because I'm with you on Rachaad White. I think Rachaad White's a great play, even at his ownership. Yeah, it's a pretty good Carolina defense, but the volume should be there, and you can't ever script Rachaad White out of a game. So I get the ownership. I like him. I'm going to be playing him. But Mike Evans is 2.9% projected owned right now in our ownership tools on Stochastic. I can't get off of this game before I ask you about him.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Evans, we know that he's got that multi-touchdown upside. We just saw it. Healthy targets, 31 in the last 3 weeks. Nothing to say. I will say I'm interested to keep an eye on. I think he'll be a little higher owned. I'm not going to say he's going to be popular, but that's very low owned, and that's very intriguing. So he's another one. I'm not looking to do this, but like there's no reason in my mind that White and a pass catcher for Tampa could coexist without Baker.
Yeah.
Even Trey Palmer. I'll give a quick shout out to Trey Palmer. He's in the Devontae Parker bucket for me.
Just dirt cheap.
5 targets, and I live with the results.
Sure. All right, San Francisco and Philly. We're going to hit 1,000, by the way, Ben. We're at 969 likes. So 31 away with 2 games to go. Yeah. How you feeling? 2,000 still?
Yeah, that late surge, it's yeah, we'll get 1,000, and it's appreciated. That's a lot of people, and I know there's a lot of people. I also a lot of people, new people, subscribe to the channel. We're gonna be, I don't even know, I'm gonna say something that's probably not true. We're gonna have 200,000 person channels. No one's ever done that, which is wildly inaccurate. Many people have, but we'll be part of that club.
Yeah, we will. 2 separate channels with 100K sub.
Appreciate it.
All thanks to the people. Appreciate you guys. Also, Owner's Box 39% filled. Hour and a half to go. 20K up top. 39% filled, dude. So once again, overlay strikes. They're giving 20K to first, regardless of how many people enter this. Links down there in the description. You already know. It's just turn your ad blocker off. Get your deposit bonus. Take advantage of the overlay. Get the free tickets. And Superflex contest. Very, very cool. Once you get the hang of that, I think it's something you'll like. San Francisco and Philly. God, Philly can't get off the field on 3rd and long. It's insane. It's so frustrating. They still find ways to win, but eventually it's going to come back to bite them. I wasn't sure how this line was going to move. In Philly, I know the Niners have had some time off. Philly, 3 games in 13 days. I still thought it might move towards Philly at home, but it didn't. It actually moved a little bit more towards San Fran. Opened at -2. They're -3 now on the road in Philly. What are you doing with the Niners? There's a lot of weapons there, a lot of mouths to feed, but it's a high-powered offense with a phenomenal offensive-minded coach, and they can put points on the board no matter who they're playing. Might be able to exploit some of these flaws in the Philly defense today.
Definitely. High-powered offense, elite playmakers, priced accordingly to me. Like Christian McCaffrey's $9,000, and he's amazing. If you can get that type of salary, go and get him. I have no problem with that. Debo's probably maybe my price adjusted favorite. I really liked him on Thanksgiving. He had 9 targets. He had 4 carries. He found the end zone. He does what he does. He's such a unique player, and he's healthy. 6,200 is probably where I'd go. And then you've got Ayuk and Kittle or Purdy in the stack. That's not what I'm getting to. McCaffrey, yes. Debo, yes. Everyone else, tournament large portfolio, but not for me personally.
I don't mind the Brock Purdy stacks.
Yeah, I get it. I have him behind the other quarterbacks though, personally.
The only thing I don't like about this, I'll tell you right now, is rushing quarterbacks have really put up some numbers against the Eagles.
Well, he's a lot of things, and I'm not sure that's that.
That's precisely what I'm saying, is that like when you've had those rushing quarterbacks against the Eagles, man, they've put up some really big games. This just is like, if he had some wheels, if he could do a little bit with his legs, I think I'd like this even more. Like single stacking Brock Purdy would be a spot that I'd love to get to this year or this week. It's not really there. I mean, they can't stop them, particularly on third downs. It's insane, but it's just the way it's been. But I guess I still think you can get to plenty of options here. Ayuk, Debo, Kittle. I think if I were to rank them, it would be Ayuk, Kittle, Debo.
Oh, really? Yeah, I would flip it personally.
Debo, Kittle, Ayuk, or Debo, Ayuk, Kittle?
Debo, Kittle, Ayuk.
Okay. All right. How about McCaffrey, though? I mean, is he a staple for you, or is it just a guy kind of a casualty of the slate?
More the latter. It's not even a casualty. I think he's fine, but I didn't say, okay, I'm going to build around McCaffrey. He's kind of like Tyreek in the sense that there's luxury spends. And if you pay down at wide receiver, if you go get a Zach Moss, if you punt at tight end, why not go get a guy that is as secure and solid as any player in the league? I would like to get some McCaffrey, and I will try, and I will get some McCaffrey today. There's no doubt.
By the way, looks like everyone who was expected to play is active. No notable inactives that we didn't expect.
Yeah.
So,
okay. That's good to know.
Very good to know. On the Eagles side, it's a tough matchup. Still a high total though. But getting the Hurts at that price point is tough. Getting the AJ Brown, it's tough. This is a really tough week to get to the Eagles, and I don't think I'm going to have a lot of them.
I don't think many people are, and that's always the balance. Like if no one wants to do it,
all right, let's hear it.
Well, if no one wants to do it, can you force them in? The problem I have is just you're not getting a discount for playing the Niners defense. That's what really kills me. Like these guys are still, 8,200, 8,800 for AJ Brown. Smith is 7,300. Goddard, I don't think is going to go. I'm not going to get the Swift. It's tough. It's tough to pay, 17,000 for a skinny stack. I want to, but I think on the slate, it's not my optimal way to build. Sims didn't love him. Devontae Smith's my favorite Eagle. I think he's at a nice sneaky price point.
Jordan, go into the Sims favorite 150, go to stack exposures, and let me see if we have any Jalen Hurts.
I wasn't getting any this
morning. I'd have to imagine we have basically none, and if we do, it's Hurts single stacks.
Yeah, I would assume it's singles.
Well, the problem is you can't really, if you're having a tough time double stacking Miami, you're sure as shit going to have a tough time double stacking Philly, unless you want to go to Olamide Zaccheaus or Julio Jones. You don't want to do that. I don't want to do that on a 10-game slate. I have no interest in that, And
your bringbacks are brutal too.
It looks like we have two Jalen. Go to lineups real quick, Jordan. Go to lineups. And then on the right side where they're starred, go into that and filter by Jalen Hurts. So filter and then Hurts. Sims tool in the link in the description, by the way. You guys want to get in on all of our NFL packages. You can do a week or a month. Amazing tools here. Took down a milli for someone 3 weeks ago, and 100K for someone in the same week. All right, so we have two Jalen Hurts lineups. It's a QB +1. Who is it with? See, Julio. That's what I'm saying. Now, it does have Tyreek Hill and Amon-Ra St. Brown, so you want to make a swap for like an A.J. Brown, fine. Then we have a QB +2. That's A.J. Brown and Julio. See, the Julio, that's just min-sal punt, hoping to catch
I'm not
lightning
doing that.
Yeah, I don't really want to do that either. But that's how you're going to do a Jalen Hurts double stack. I knew it would be Julio Jones.
I won't do that.
No, it's tough. But also has like Brevin Jordan in it, Zach Moss, Falcons D is fine, but you're punting tight end there too. That's kind of tough. Kind of tough. Any DeAndre Swift before we close it out with this last game?
Definitely not.
Yeah, not the week for DeAndre Swift. Cleveland and the Rams, 40.5-point total. Joe Flacco. How old do you think he is, if you had to guess?
36.
Okay, he's 38. I thought he was older for some reason.
Yeah.
38. Yep. He's starting. This is not great. They're 4-point dogs, low total. Are you going to Amari?
No.
No, even you aren't.
No, it's not his fault. I love him. He's a great player. It's just, this is ridiculous. I'm just not sure what we can reasonably project for any of these Cleveland pass catchers. And Amari, you know, he's still 50. Like he's 5,900 when Watson was playing, and now he's 5,700 with Flacco.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
It's unfortunate.
can I give you the one upside? Not upside, but, and this is just totally different, right? Because one of them was the Jets, one of them is the Browns. Do you remember when Flacco started those games at the beginning of the season last year, and skill players still got there because he threw the ball 400 times in 2 games?
Vaguely, but the problem with this
week
is
1, 59 attempts, week 2, 44, week
no
3,
chance that's going to happen.
week 3, 52 attempts. There's just, there's no possible way that happens. Just
Cleveland
none.
is specifically built to withstand this, and that's a problem.
But so is the Jets defense. I mean, they were.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Cleveland's going to be. I think Cleveland's going to be just fine in this game. I would bet them getting the points.
Okay. No skill players, nothing from this side though.
If you wanted to go, to that backfield and you say, you know what, I want to take a shot with a Jerome Ford at 55, I get it. He had 7 targets last week, and maybe they trail again, and that's a ticket to him getting some of that, but that's about it. And Njoku to me is still a serious target on he's just a player. I like him at tight end.
Yeah, but 17% ownership on Njoku is wild.
Well, that's just stupid. I hope that comes down a little.
It's so much.
Yeah, that's very surprising, to be honest.
The target share has been insane, but this is a guy that's had, like, you look at his targets, right? This is the crazy part. 8, 6, 9, 15, and 9. Oh, and another 9. So 9, 8, 6, 9, 15, and 9. He has one game in that stretch with more than 12 fantasy points.
Yeah, again, limited a lot of things of touchdown equity.
He's a good play. He's higher end than I thought with Joe Flacco at the helm. That's all. Anyway, let's wrap it up with the Rams. We'll turn this over to Live Before Lock. Do you know over the last 6 weeks, Cooper Kupp is the wide receiver 81?
Yeah, it hasn't worked. Can't seem to get in a rhythm. Can't seem to stay on the field. The targets are just, it's not what it was.
I like one player from this team, and I know it's a tough matchup, but Cleveland hasn't been the same defense on the road as they have at home. I think Kyren Williams is still 100% viable. It's a tough spot, but I kind of don't care. They love using this guy as much as humanly possible. Even coming back from a prolonged absence, Kyren Williams in his first game back comes out and an absolute pure domination. 22 total looks and touches, over 200 yards, 2 touchdowns. The guy's going to be on the field. They don't have anyone else they want to use in the backfield. He comes back in week 12 and plays 61% of snaps. I expect it to be more this week. So I think even despite a tough matchup, they're favorites at home. I still have no problem getting the Kyren Williams.
He cost me a lot of money last week. That was the guy. He was unbelievable. 200 yards from scrimmage, 2 touchdowns through the air. They didn't seem to ease him back, as you mentioned. Now, Cleveland's defense, you mentioned, not maybe firing on all cylinders, but they're not Arizona either. So I think this is going to be much tougher sledding, but this guy's going to get a lot of looks, and he's definitely playable. He would be my favorite play from the Rams too, but I still don't really like it.
I get it. But you agree that the volume is enough to always consider a guy.
I saw it firsthand when I was just like, okay, this is good. I've got McBride, and these people are down 78, and they just have Kyron Williams and Josh Allen. This should be no problem. And I lost by like 25 points.
In what contest?
I was in I had a really good team in the 5-5-5, and
5-5-5 milli?
No, so after the 1 o'clock games, I was in first in the smaller 5-5-5, but I would have been in first in the milli. And I was just like, if I put this in the wrong 5-5-5, that's it for me. But it didn't
end
matter.
Up mattering, huh?
No, I came in 7th.
Oh, okay. So still a nice. No. You didn't just get wiped out. Oh no,
I didn't get wiped out. We're not going. Please,
all right,
blood pressure. Let's not. Not.
Some good news for you though. We hit 1,100 likes.
That is great news, and even better news. We got the fellas coming up to lead us into the lock here. I want to see what they have to say. College football playoffs going to be announced. It's a good time in the next 20 minutes.
I'm going to get these lineups in. I'm going to place some bets.
Oh yeah,
using the wonderful Odd Shopper plus EV tool. Could life be any better, any easier for that matter? Got the Sims tool, got the positive EV tool on Odd Shopper. It adds years on my life, brother.
Yeah, I mean, no joke. People say that to me all the time. Like, how do you manage all this stuff? I couldn't without. That's why I use these tools, because it makes life so much easier. It does the work for me, so I don't have to slave away at all these things. It identifies the value, and I put my money on the value, and then we see what happens.
Links to all that good stuff in the description if you want to join the family here. Make your life a whole lot easier. Ben, man, I missed you. Good to be back. Fun show.
It's fun to have you back.
Hey, stay pessimistic, but go win today.
See what happens.
All right. Hey, coming up next, it's Eric Lindquist. It's Matt Gajewski. While you wait in the next 30 seconds, make sure you're not like the guy who super chatted us earlier that didn't have the stochastic avatar, would have got the free month, $200 value of any subscription of his choice. Guys, you want to get involved. You want to get a free month of anything, $200 value. Go to stochastic.com/avatar. Rock that avatar, whether it's DraftKings, FanDuel, Owner's Box, doesn't matter. Finish top 3 in a field of 5,000 or more. Could be a nickel entry, a quarter entry, doesn't matter. Tweet your wins to us. It's Stochastic HOF. Get a free month of everything we have for either NFL or NBA, whatever sport you want, and get inducted into the Hall of Fame. Wonderful ceremony. A wonderful ceremony that will never be forgotten. So make sure you're doing that before we go into this slate. Till next time, here's Eric Lindquist and Matt Gajewski, friends. Oh, Matt Gajewski, no hat today, hair growing. All right, we'll see you back here soon. Peace.
We can go on a tangent about that one. I'm here for it. What's going on, everybody? Eric Lindquist at Stochastic. Excited to bring NFL Live Before Lock to you. Week 13. Smash the like button there for our guy Loughy. Coming back to work already here. Newborn intact. Everything went swimmingly. So happy to see him once again. I'm sure you are too. But yeah, smash the like button for him. And if not for him, how about for my guy Matt Gajewski? Matt_Gajewski, king of college football streets. How was your Saturday, sir?
Saturday was okay. From a DFS perspective, wasn't great. Bets were good. Games weren't really that exciting. A lot of really low scoring affairs. There was a shutout. That'll happen in Iowa games.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's been better conference championship Saturday, but bowl season's coming up. Excited for that for sure. How was your Saturday?
It was good. Just traveled back from Vegas. I was at the Pac-12 championship on Friday there. Nice. Unbelievable football game. That was a good one. That was the best one out of all of them. Got to be there. Took my mother-in-law to Vegas, just like everybody does. And very excited to, she's the diehard Oregon fan. It was her birthday. And I was like, you know what? We got to make this happen. So ended up being way more fun than you would ever imagine going to Vegas with your mother-in-law would be. But helps to have her be obsessed with college football. Always want to really dig into that because, well, it's better than her not liking football. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, anytime you have some connection to sports at family events, it just makes things way better.
Yes, it does. Except for when my brothers ask me anything about their $10 home league, then no, thank you. No, thank you. I won't even be in that. But anyway, we got Jordan Klein along for the ride here. 48th hour in a row. He's running a marathon here. Good to have him. How you doing, my dude? There he is. Oh, he's so happy to be here. Okay, he's maybe less happy to be here than I am, but I'm excited for this slate. I think this is a really fun one. I have a little bit less volume in play today because of the travel and because of everything else. And I'm thinking about adding a little bit here as we go, because there is some chalk today and there is some game theory that can be played. There's some scary fades. There's some really good pivots. What do you think about this week 13 slate before we dive in?
Yeah, it's the first week we've had a super cheap chalk running back who's going to be likely 70% plus owned across tournaments. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him hit like 90% in some of the smaller field stuff. So contextually, there's weird dynamics that we haven't had this year. And with the really chalky value piece, it's also led to the studs being pretty chalky as well, primarily Tyreek Hill and Christian McCaffrey. So we'll get into all that, but weird slate overall, different slate.
Weird slate. And anything that stood out with the actives and actives, that's generally where we start with. And I just saw Ezekiel Elliott active, Breece Hall active, Marquise Brown active, Keenan Allen active, Treylon Burks active. Everybody's playing. Noah Brown active.
Yeah, kind of what we expected.
Yep, exactly what we did. So really nothing that changed for me. Hopefully nothing changed for you either. Let's party. Let's dive in. I just want to talk right from the get-go here, the quarterback position and spending up. Jalen Hurts, CJ Stroud, Justin Herbert kind of forgotten up there at 8K because, again, why is Justin Herbert 8K here today? I am not exactly sure. But then Tua Tagovailoa ends up being 8.4%. I find it a little surprising that Jalen Hurts is a little bit more popular in our projections than a Tua Tagovailoa going up against the worst team in the NFL against quarterbacks and wide receivers alike in the Washington Commanders. Between these four quarterbacks here, starting Tua, because again, they're the only ones way over 7K there. How are we kind of like allocating lineups? How are we kind of breaking these four down? Because for me, it's just Tua by a landslide.
Really? Tua by a landslide?
Yes.
I guess I don't have a lot of any of these guys in my current run of exposure because of the slate dynamics. And there's a couple of really cheap guys I think that are interesting. But I guess if you force me to pick, I have the most of Stroud. Really good game environment there against Denver, high total in the 40s. And he has very clear stacking options. I don't think Noah Brown really does anything to Tank Dell or Nico Collins. I think that just kind of hurts Robert Woods. And those stacks are a lot cheaper than some of the other quarterbacks you mentioned. Like a Hurts stack is going to be very, very expensive. A Tua Tagovailoa stack is going to be extremely expensive and hyper chalky on this slate with the Tyreek Hill stuff. Unless you include like a Waddle or something, you're walking into a ton of ownership with him. So out of the ones you mentioned, he was the one I actually had the least of. For me, it went Stroud, Hurts, Tagovailoa, and I didn't really include Herbert in there. He's clearly the worst play with the XFL receivers he's using right now outside of Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having a tough time, mainly because so much has changed from doing the show on Thursday morning, breaking down everything with my guy, Chris Spags. So good to have him here on the program. Talking through the ownership of everything. The top stacks tools just changed drastically. Miami has come down from around 25% to 19.5%. Philly's up there at 11% against San Francisco. Detroit, the Chargers at 10%, which is so surprising to me. I just want to play Keenan Allen as a pivot in some lineups and just kind of move along with my life. And then Houston, 9.2%. I thought I would have a ton of Houston coming into this slate, but it would appear that the Sims tool not going to be getting me nearly as much of them as I was expecting. So it is going to end up being quite a bit of Tua, a lot of Tua doubles, a lot of skinny stacks there with, some with the Jalen Waddle piece. And then a lot of Washington bring back. I mean, Sam Howell dropping back at such a ridiculous rate here. And that leads us down into this next tier of quarterbacks. Maybe it's just I'm playing Washington, Miami in a ridiculous amount of lineups, and that's just going to be what my day is predicated on. It's like a 50 total, so it's not the worst stand to make, but it seems as though other people might be making it too. So at least it does in terms of the wide receiver ownership, but nobody's really getting to Sam Howell like he's been like the punt du jour in some weeks, but at 6,200, pretty nominal ownership there at 7.2%. And then Goff 6,500 against New Orleans. I want to get your take about that game environment in general, because it feels like one that there are pieces that I just want to get to way more of the field than I just don't know how with how much Miami, Washington I'm playing. So break down this next tier of quarterbacks for us, the guys from 6K to 7K. And yeah, Brock Purdy going to be popular too.
Yeah, the two players I have most interest in are right at the bottom of this tier in Purdy and Howell. It just allows you to jam more interesting players in your lineup Whereas like even a Goff, every dollar matters on this slate. And he doesn't project quite as well with the way Detroit plays. Very happy to just take their foot off the gas and run the ball with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery whenever they possibly can. And then Kyler, he's the worst projection out of anyone in this range. So he's, I think, a pretty easy fade outside of the larger stuff. As far as Howell goes, I'm a little worried about him becoming more owned with more people using tools and stuff. We've seen ownership come in incorrect a lot of times. So I think there's this weird adjustment period, but using the Sims, even in the small field stuff, I got a ton of Howell. And at 6,200 and Brock Purdy at 6,100, they just let so much work for you in your lineup. So like my real question heading into this slate is, do we see this vast gap in ownership between Howell and Purdy that we're projecting? And I kind of think we don't. The only thing that really stands out Howell's direction, I think that's different than Purdy's. They're going to be big underdogs against Miami, but it hasn't mattered in the past. He's going to drop back somewhere between 40 and 50 times. Stacking him is definitely more challenging than Purdy, I think, but you still, for the most part, know the ball is going to McLaurin, Dotson, and Curtis Samuel. With Purdy, it's a lot easier. Matchup, I think, is neutral. Philly can definitely be beat through the air specifically. You have Ayuk, you have Debo, you have Kittle, all a little more expensive than the Washington stacks, but I also think it's going to be way more owned. So I don't know. I'm kind of wrestling with this right now. I'm going to play a lot of both, but I think I'm going to end up maybe with a little more Purdy than I initially expected, just seeing all this steam coming on Howell.
Yeah, it's strange to me. And it's 6,200. Again, it seems as though it's more nominal here at the moment. And again, maybe we get to the flip, turn the cards face up, and you see a lot more ownership there on Howell. But as you said, the tools definitely going to be getting me to doubles of Washington, playing quite a bit of them as well here, and just fine with it here. Brock Purdy, somebody that I'm generally really, really high on and get a ton of. I feel as though this is not going to be the slate that I end up doing that. I think everything you just said about him, I think probably applies to Brock Purdy. 6,100, a little bit cheaper than some of these other top tier guys. And then the skill position players just come along for the ride nonstop. Philly, they've been pretty bad as a secondary if we're just going to be dead honest about things. And San Francisco, again, I'm just surprised by the Jalen Hurts ownership. I know that the tush push continues to be a thing, the brotherly shove. And, you know, that works out. There's been some game environments that have gone completely berserk here. That Josh Allen one here last week, and you know, a couple of these Washington spots as well. But I'm going to be getting to more Sam Howell than Brock Purdy on this specific slate. Now, smash the like button as we go sub 6K. We're going to go dumpster diving. And Russell Wilson, you couldn't pay me enough money to roster Russell Wilson at double-digit ownership. I'm so surprised by this. And I know it's a Houston defense that you kind of get these game environments. CJ Stroud brings everybody along for the ride. Good stuff, but no way I'm going to play Russell Wilson at this ownership. Going to be a full fade for me, not have a single share. And I don't know if I've had something like that that's shown up on a specific slate like today or like this in weeks past. You know, you can still find ways to make positive EV lineups, even with these super popular quarterbacks, but this is too much for me. Would rather scattershot a number of these guys. And yeah, I'm going to play Kenny Pickett. So what? It's going to be fun, right? Right?
I don't know. He's never had a good game. So
okay, good.
Hopefully
awesome. With Jordan Addison, he had a lot of good games at Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I thought we were talking about NFL though.
I know we are, but I'm just being sarcastic. I forget sarcasm and Matt Gajewski. I apologize. I will never do that again.
I was giving it back to you.
Fuck.
He's never had a good NFL game.
Okay. From 5 to 6K, anybody that you're getting to over the field, like I am Kenny Pickett.
Yeah, that's a weird range. I think there are some interesting pivots, especially with the ownership coming in, like Wilson, you mentioned, and then right above it with Purdy and Howell. I think Derek Carr is in a really good game environment. He's definitely not a quarterback you feel good about. This is just a sprinkling for me in a set of 150. You have options. Chris Olave is going to play in this game. You also have injuries. So guys like A.T. Perry come up around the minimum price, which should help you get some leverage off some other highly owned, really cheap plays at wide receiver. So for the first time all year, I actually don't think I hate the Derek Carr stacks, which is absolutely wild to say. Normally I hate him. And then Minshew, I think, is somewhat interesting against Tennessee. Definitely that pass funnel defense. Minshew has not been great this year, but I also find it pretty interesting. He's going to be somewhere around 5% owned. Everyone wants to play some combination of Pittman and Downs, but it doesn't look like a lot of that's going to Minshew. So you can make a stack with some of those players, eat some chalk, but then you do have a direct leverage point with Minshew there. Those would be my two favorites in this range, with you on Russell Wilson, trying to actively not get a ton of him, even though that's a great game environment. Russell Wilson, he almost operates like Jared Goff in a sense, where Denver, if they can, they will use him as a game manager. Only when they're severely pushed or trailing will they unleash Wilson. So he always scares me for that reason.
Yeah, he's the 2023 version of Alex Smith, if you will.
It's a good way to put it.
It's just, it feels as though a guy that is going to target in on a couple of key players. Cortland Sutton can definitely get there for you. Javonte Williams, going through some of his efficiency numbers, hasn't been nearly as impressive this season, coming off of last year's ACL tear and, I mean, complete knee reconstruction from that. So not crazy surprising. Hopefully he can find a little something in the offseason, but going to be a little bit too popular for me as well. Just seems like Cortland Sutton's going to be the only piece that I really get to on that Denver side of the ball. And yeah, I will throw him in with a couple of my CJ Stroud stacks, but God, it's just that's going to be the chalk way, I think, of constructing those lineups. So not even all that excited in the largest field stuff like the $3, the Millie, stuff like that, to be throwing those kind of lineups in, because I think there's going to be a lot of overlap and something like that. But yeah, the whole Kenny Pickett thing, I don't like it, but it's Arizona, and both of the running backs I think are in phenomenal spots, but it's tough to kind of figure that one out entirely. And yeah, Kenny Pickett's never had a good game, but Pat Freiermuth had a great game last week. And there's ways that some of these skill position players, George Pickens, maybe, can we get him along for the ride? That'd be cool. And Deontay Johnson, he learned how to catch a football this season, and also how to get his feet down in the end zone. So things are on the up and up here without Matt Canada there as the offensive coordinator in Pittsburgh. But anything else here at the far bottom? God forbid you say Joe Flacco. I cannot click on Joe Flacco today.
Gonna play a little bit of Joe Flacco.
You are?
Thing. Yeah.
What?
Like, I'm at 5.5%.
Oh, that's 5.5% more than I have.
Let me see this recent update.
Because
might be lower.
Okay.
It's 4%.
4%. Okay. Well, you just saved 1.5% of your money, so that's cool.
Maybe. We'll see.
I can't wait for Joe Flacco to go out and sling it, though. I think he can pass. Can he pass Joe Montana on the all-time passing list? Did I see some blurb? I was at the BetMGM Sportsbook and saw something go across the bottom line, but 48 college football games on and just a lot of loud noises.
I didn't see that, and I would be shocked if he's approaching any records, but I also don't know.
I think he is. I think I saw something about that. Correct me if I'm wrong, Chad. I'm sure you will. You love to do that. So just wanted to throw out that that's a possibility. And it's also a possibility that you, my friends, could get the Sims tool for 1 month completely free. And here's how: you play really good at DFS today. Maybe don't roster Joe Flacco or my guy Kenny Pickett or some of these other dinglings down at the bottom. But at the top end, yeah, we got some good quarterbacks to be getting to. And you can get that Stokastic.com avatar, Stokastic.com/avatar. Go to Stokastic HOF over on the Twitter /the X/ whatever Elon is calling it these days, and get yourself a free month of the Sims tool. If you finish in the top 3 in any tournament whatsoever of 5,000 or more entries, so do that. That would be really, really cool. You get that free month of the $200 Sims package there, the Sims Max. Really cool stuff here at Stokastic. And yeah, you're going to be able to enjoy more than just the money that you put into your account. That is for darn sure. So fire that up, my friends. Really cool stuff that we've had going for a long time. So Stokastic.com/avatar, download the avatar, have it in that screenshot, and bang, tough actin' Tenactin. Really cool stuff. My guy, Matt Gajewski, anything else we need to discuss here at quarterback? Because God, it's just going to be Miami, Washington, and filler for me.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we hit most of it.
Bailey's happy. No.
Nah.
Thank God.
He might not even play the full game.
Tim Boyle's cooked, right?
Yeah, I don't know what Tim Boyle's doing. It's not playing football well, though.
Yeah. More like Tim lukewarm. Let's go to running back, guys. This is Zach Moss is popular.
Zach Moss is popular for a good reason. You should just play him.
Okay. Let's talk about other guys then. How about that? Zach Moss, he's just it's hard to get away from rostering some.
He's Jonathan Taylor at like 4K.
Wait, what?
He's Jonathan Taylor at like 4K.
It's tough not to click on a guy who's going to play 90% of snaps. I saw, I had a come to Jesus moment here this weekend because there was a part of me, I was like, his rushing prop is going to get bet up to 80 and I'm going to take the under. And you know what? I'm a coward and I took the over of his 16.5 receiving yards instead.
It's not a coward. You're finding good plus EV bets. I would do the same if it was legal.
That's what you do. Again, got the old BetMGM tickets and I feel good about my life. But we got Christian McCaffrey here at 9K, Rachaad White 6,300. We've got a lot of other popular running backs. Jaylen Warren now getting steamed up. He should have gotten steamed up. He's 5,400 going up against Arizona and presumed to have the majority of the work here, even though Najee Harris still a headache back and forth. Never know who's going to go completely nuclear. But Javonte Williams, if he goes nuclear, I will be in a lot of trouble because I have 0. Denver, as I said, going to be a pretty large fade for me here on this slate outside of having some Cortland Sutton. But out of these other popular running backs, who are you kind of getting the most? Who are you allocating salary for the most?
McCaffrey and Rachaad White primarily. There's ways to get McCaffrey. It's pretty easy with Zach Moss being there and then a couple of the cheap receiving plays that we'll talk about in a little bit. So Philly is a little stiffer in run defense. With that said, McCaffrey wins in so many ways and he has the best workload in the NFL. So I don't really see a lot of ways you get away from him outside of just building other constructions. Rachaad White, he has like a mini Christian McCaffrey workload, to be honest, and he's facing Carolina. I would much rather find the salary to get to him rather than play like Jaylen Warren, Javonte Williams, Ramondre Stevenson, Breece Hall, to kind of poke holes in all those guys. I don't know why anyone's assuming Jaylen Warren's going to get more work in this offense when they've never done that. And Najee Harris continues to get impactful work for this team. Even with the OC change, like that was supposed to be the catalyst for Jaylen Warren getting more work. Didn't happen. So everything that people are saying positively about Jaylen Warren, who's now probably going to be like 25 or 30% owned. Like I would just rather play Najee. They're the same back in terms of volume. Maybe Warren gets a little bit more in the pass game and he's definitely more efficient, but the coaching staff hasn't realized that. And I'm not going to bet on that anymore. With Javonte, I'm a little worried about the routes from like McLaughlin and Samaje Perine. In certain game environments, this can get away from Javonte and it's still a 3-way committee. I just don't trust that he's actually earned all of that work yet. Ramondre, I mean, you're playing the Chargers, but your offense is terrible. You have Zappy and Mac Jones, whatever combination they decide to use. Looks like they'll try to give Zappy a larger look today. I don't know if he can even make it through the full game. And Zeke is active. So you got a timeshare and a horrible offense meeting a horrible defense. What gives? I tend to think it's not Ramondre. And then Breece is coming off an injury. This offense is just so absolutely pitiful. Even a matchup against Atlanta, if Breece doesn't break off like a 70-yard touchdown, you're probably dead with him in your lineup. So I'll be focusing my attention on Moss, McCaffrey, White, and then pivoting with some guys beyond this like Gibbs, Kyron, Najee, Bijan, James Conner, and Jerome Ford, guys like that.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun with some pivots because I think there are incredible tournament plays at the running back position. You named the first one, Najee Harris. That's going to be somebody that I am well overweight to. Everything you laid out is exactly the way that I think and feel here. 10.2% for him compared to 20% Jaylen Warren. It could end up even more lopsided than that as you're playing smaller field tournaments. That's kind of my impression that I'm getting. Yeah, there's a lot of people who understand the game theory, but there's a lot of people who also jam best projected. And that's where, if I'm looking at a 50-50 timeshare, yeah, Jaylen Warren did have that fumble. Somebody threw that into chat there at the very beginning of last game. Thought that maybe, that kind of got away from the whole coach speak of, hey, Jaylen Warren's going to be getting more work, yada, yada, yada. Well, not if he fumbles it there on the first possession or second possession, and led to maybe a little bit more work for Najee. But then Najee having a good game, I'm just looking at it like a 50-50 type split, 55-45 in a lot of worst case scenarios, barring fumbling or, injury. So give me Najee there at half the ownership at the moment. Jerome Ford's an interesting one. I thought about him quite a bit, didn't end up pulling the trigger in like a very prominent way, but I got a guy that's kind of similar there around that price range, and it's James Conner going up against Pittsburgh. I just keep playing James Conner. I understand it has not been good in the box score the last, 5 weeks, 6 weeks or so, but it's a running back getting almost all of the work and opportunity in a spot where you got some guys dinged up on the Arizona side. Marquise Brown is active for this one. Trey McBride is active for this one, and that creates, at least some questions about what the game plan is here with Kyler Murray in a lost season. You're basically trying to evaluate Kyler Murray, but they've had James Conner on the field nonstop alongside with him there, 5,800. I'm going to be getting to a little bit there at 5%. Think that that's a good leverage spot over a number of these like upper 5K, mid 5K type backs. But Jerome Ford, I find to be an interesting one as well. Who are some of your favorite completely off the board tournament pivots? Because there's one or two others that are making my lineups that make my well, that's inappropriate, Eric. That's not where your mind should go. Yeah, it'll make something pucker if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I think Ford's a great one. You just might see elevated run rates with Flacco, and they're already a pretty run-heavy team against the Rams, who definitely don't scare you. I agree with you on Connor. He has a better workload than like Jalen Warren and Najee Harris on the other side, just not as much efficiency. Bijan is what he is at this point. You're hoping for efficiency in a timeshare. And otherwise, Kyren Williams at 7,200 is an expensive option, which is why I think he's pretty low owned on this slate. But the workload's awesome. I'm not that concerned about Cleveland's defense just because Kyren wins in so many ways. He's like mini McCaffrey, where he's going to get passes out of the backfield, and the volume is going to be amazing. So if you get one score, I think you are looking at someone that can pay off value. It's just hopefully the Rams decide not to slam him into the back of the O-line 20 times in this game, which, I mean, might happen. I don't know what they're going to do. And last one, the Detroit backs are interesting to me. Gibbs, especially with his role in the pass game, going against New Orleans. He's more of a contrarian spend-up option. But again, I prefer him over a lot of the guys in this 5K range. Would rather have him than like Breece Hall, Ramondre, Javonte, Jalen Warren. So I think he's interesting in a game that has a good total and can get up and down a little bit.
Do not pull up the graphic, Jordan Klein. Do not pull up the graphic. Please do not pull up the graphic. You're the best. And just saying. Anywho, Gray Hair Gaming, $2. Great to see you. Eric, this is the worst bit in all of fantasy sports, but who is your exotic pick today? Christian McCaffrey. Enjoy that one. Thank you so much for the super chat. We continue on our merry way. What are we doing with like 1% Miami running backs, please? Jordan. What are we doing with 1% owned Miami running backs, Matt Gajewski? Because I see Raheem Mostert and I see Devon Achane sitting at 1%, and it makes me want to click their names.
I know we probably should. They're like the trickiest players to project probably in all of fantasy.
Yes.
With it, yeah, I mean, their volume's not great. It's just pure efficiency. And I mean, we can't really just go in and project Devon Achane for 10 yards per carry, which is essentially what he's been getting. And I mean, they've been very, very cautious with him. The guy like scrapes his knee and then he's out for the rest of the game. And then they sit him out the subsequent week, even though he fully practices. So I don't know. They're treating this guy like he's a toddler. And I'm kind of actually worried about in-game injury risk, which I never am, because they take him out for the slightest of ailments. Like they are pure cowards with him. But luckily they have depth. So I guess like Mostert is a little more interesting to me for that reason. Haven't done that with him, but I mean, everything lines up here. Matchup is good. Washington doesn't have a single good player on defense. Their first round pick is out of this game. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to actively get some of them. I don't know where I'm going to land, but I definitely want pieces of Miami. And the other thing is like, this is direct leverage off Tyreek Hill. It's pretty hard to play Tyreek and like Achane and Mostert in the same lineup. You can do it. I've made a couple that I didn't really like the looks of, but I think the leverage is going to be pretty good at the end of the day. It's nice that there's also two of them. It's not like there's one Miami back that everyone's using as the leverage play.
Yeah, got to get to a little bit of Raheem Mostert, that is for sure. I think Achane maybe. Again, I don't know what his workload's going to look like coming off of re-aggravating a knee injury, but I got to imagine he's not going to be in the 50-50 type split. Maybe he is, and I'm just out of my mind, but this feels like a pretty clear-cut play. Raheem Mostert, I think, is the priority of the two for me, and try to find ways to make it work. You said it's direct leverage off of Tyreek. I think that those make sense for a lot of those Christian McCaffrey builds where Tyreek puts up 25. I'm probably going to be in trouble because I'm way over on Tyreek Hill, but I think there's a number of those lineups that I've allocated where I really like the look of Mostert, McCaffrey, Zach Moss, that kind of being the trio there and moving along my merry way. So I think Raheem Mostert wanted to at least start, highlight, center him as somebody at 7,300. Nobody wants to click on him. Totally get it. Really hard to project for a ton there. But this Washington team is going to continue to be fruitful for offenses, considering no Young, no Sweat, no problem. Anything else you want to talk about here at running back before we go along?
I think we hit on everyone I'm playing for the most part. I don't have a lot of interest in like the really off the board plays.
Jahmyr Gibbs, last guy that I wanted to throw in that I kind of like here in this spot. I'm not sure what to make of the workload. I doubt it's going to be 67-33 or whatever we saw, but sub 30 for David Montgomery. That was an extremely negative game script there coming off of Green Bay, just putting the schlacking on them on Thanksgiving Day. But not going to be going nuts with Gibbs, but having a little bit, I suppose. Kyron Williams, don't do it this week. Thank you for last week. Although Kupp, Nakua, I'm mad. And if you go nuts against Cleveland, I'm going to lose my damn mind this week. That's for sure. Might need like an emotional hedge stack on that one for sure. Yeah, that's really all we got for running back, friends. Smash the like button here 48 minutes before lock, and wouldn't you know it, the best place you could possibly put your money right now, in between then and now, is over at Owner's Box. Yes, Owner's Box, the sponsor of our program here, but this is why. It's not that they're the sponsor, it's that I love overlay. I like tournaments that don't fill. I like making more money rather than less money. I like playing on a site that has not been solved by a lot of the top players here yet, and where a lot of the top players aren't going and playing every single Sunday. So if you want to do all of the same things, head to Owner's Box right now. Take advantage of this great promotion that we have going with them, where you can get first match deposit bonus up to $250. You're going to get a $5 lightning lineup, $5 contest ticket. Anything that's $10 up to $250, you're going to get matched in Owner's Box credit. You're going to have an opportunity to fire up on a site where you don't have to worry about defense. Yes, defense going to be a thing that we have to discuss at length again today. It's actually a little bit more spread out this week, I suppose, but just nice not to have to think about it at Owner's Box. And then you want to talk game stacks. You want to talk college football DFS style play, which is the best form of football DFS that exists, where you can stack up an entire game. You can play a super flex, 2 quarterbacks in a lineup, have multiple stacks, way more fun lineup construction over at Owner's Box. So sign up at the link that Jordan Klein dropped into chat or in the video description box below. Check out everything we have going with Owner's Box because, well, it's great. $250, way more than the standard $100 first match deposit bonuses you see throughout the entire industry. And in addition, the lightning lineup, the $5 contest ticket, so many other great offerings here at Owner's Box. So again, the overlay, it's less than half filled right now, 46% filled in their main contest variation. I would be shocked, floored if this got over 80% here between now and lock. Only 46 minutes to go. There's been times during this program where this was 55, 60% filled. It's going to overlay more than a standard week right now. So I would be checking out Owner's Box if I were you, getting in here at a site that is truly set up for you to win. Yes, we have the Sims tool that also helps you out with that too. But saying this is a site that you have a much better chance to see a high ROI going on this Sunday. So thank you to Owner's Box, but thank you specifically for giving us DFS players a better opportunity to make more money because, hey, it's better than less money. Look at that. I know math. But thank you to Owner's Box. We continue on our merry way to the wide receiver position, Tyreek Hill. This is a weird thing to throw out there, but it's hard to play both. I do have some lineups with both, but relative to ownership, Christian McCaffrey, Tyreek Hill, both are crazy expensive at different positions, but who do you have more of? Because the fact that I have like 65% Tyreek Hill freaks the shit out of me.
I have more Tyreek Hill than Christian McCaffrey, but it's not substantial. I'm coming in ahead of the field slightly on both of them and, like the upper 30% ownership range. But they're both awesome plays. I think you're kind of just picking your poison. The only thing I would be cognizant of is playing both of them. If you play them together, you're likely looking at a construction that mirrors a lot of the field. And then just be careful with some of the value plays you are using, because if you throw in a guy like Elijah Moore, you'll be holding hands with a lot of the field. So just be wary of them together. Individually, they're both awesome plays.
Yeah, Jordan Klein, fire up the lineup generator here, because I think this is a really, really fun spot to utilize this. The lineup generator available for less than $15 for a week. If you want to fire it up here, if you're trying to make some lineups quick, this is basically the Sims tool, which is far more expensive option, giving it to you at a very, very low price point by just tailor making the lineups. They're basically doing all of the Sims, the 10,000 lineups that they're simming together, or 10,000 contests, running it that many times, and then getting you the best ROI lineups, making them it's almost foolproof. You just simply save a bunch of those at the top. But I want to just show the people what is happening at the wide receivers position specifically, because I think it's very, very fascinating. Keenan Allen's a guy who's showing up quite a bit for me in the Sims tool, but in addition to Tyreek Hill, and again, Christian McCaffrey, it's not that I'm not getting to him at all, but it seems as though when you're talking about the volatility of a wide receiver position, and McCaffrey, he's minus 230 or minus 250, depending on what book you look at, to score a touchdown today. But at 9K running back, because of Zach Moss, because of some of these other like 5K guys, whether it's Warren, Najee, whomever, seems as though we have some money to be spending up here at wide receiver. And the Sims tool is really, really, really having us go towards that top end. So I'm feeling pretty darn good about getting ourselves to some of those top tier guys. But yeah, Jordan Klein, are we able to pull up the lineup generator? Yeah, let's do that, please. That would be so lovely. Why not make that ad read another 10 minutes? I don't know, because I don't want to kill all of you, but also Owner's Box is phenomenal. So like I can talk about it as much as possible. Look how much Tyreek Hill we're getting there. It was 55% on the last show. I saw that. That was cool to see. Can we do 2-man stacks plus run back? Because that's always a fun one to show the people. And this is kind of where I'm getting to the copious amounts of Washington and Miami that I am. But I want you to just kind of see Matt Gajewski, your contrarian lineups. Just throw the contrarian ones together. And yes, there are some Flaccos that are showing up for me as I'm running it. So maybe not as horrible as what I had earlier said. So there's that. But you can see we're able to delete the ones from the last show. We're able to make 20 new ones here very, very quickly. Makes me happy to watch this in action because, well, just reminds me how easy it is for y'all to put it together here. Jerry Jeudy up there at the top. Oh my goodness. Brevin Jordan there, tight end option. We'll get to him for damn sure. Russell Wilson, Cortland Sutton, Tyreek Hill, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and yeah, Keenan Allen there at 20%. It's a pretty hefty amount of Keenan Allen relative to what I expect his ownership to be here. And what do we have him at the moment? 14.8%. So it's come up a little bit here, but with no Christian Gonzalez out there, he's been out since like week 2, who quack would have been an amazing cornerback to watch this entire season. But Keenan Allen, 9K, a piece that I'm getting to quite a bit here on this slate. Do you like him or any other wide receiver here out of these 4 that are 8,500 and above?
Yeah, I like Keenan a lot. I'm a little worried about the Sims just giving a ton of him. Still trying to like find the balance in, this guy's projected to be wildly under-owned. The Sims giving you a ton of him. How many people are actually using the Sim and then driving up his ownership, if you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I'm not sure right now what to do with him, but he just appears to be underpriced and underprojected in terms of what his ownership is.
Yeah, it's gonna be a spot that I make a pretty large stand. And AJ Brown, 8,800. Again, it's weird to see Jalen Hurts at nearly 10% ownership and then his top wide receiver at 5.7%, but that's because the volume you're seeing towards Hill, Allen, St. Brown. God, it's such like a remember me spot here. Last 2 weeks, A.J. Brown got completely phased out against Kansas City. Buffalo, you saw Devonta Smith kind of get highlighted, starred, center folded there in that spot. And A.J. Brown, just kind of the forgotten the guy after, I don't know, having like 6 weeks in a row of ballistic box scores. But such is life and such is DFS. Again, for me, it's more of a volume thing. And Keenan Allen could see infinity targets. Tyreek Hill does see infinity targets every week. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, I like, run backs for those Saints spots where we are going to get to a little bit of Derek Carr, but under 8K, this is where it's just Jalen Waddle to the moon for me. Tank Dell, 7,400, yet still pulling ownership as he should. He's been very good this season. And then Devonta Smith, 5.7%. Again, nobody clicking on these Eagles going up against San Francisco because their defense is ridiculous. And I got to repeat, wild to see Jalen Hurts ownership, if you ask me, but 7K to 8K, a huge spot where you can look at leverage. You can look at popular pieces like a Tank Dell, who's been incredible. But who are you landing on the most in your lineups, Matt Gajewski?
In the 8K range?
7 to 8.
7 to 8K. So this is a range I think that's kind of ripe with pivots, especially when you break down some of the offensive environments and where we're seeing chalk come in. We also didn't talk about a lot of like the expensive pivots. Like Amon-Ra, I think, is an excellent pivot too in that expensive range. But to go down here, Jalen Waddle, you already kind of laid this out. We've seen him have hyper productive games in this offense. It just hasn't happened a lot of late. I think that's largely due to injury, but target share is still hyper condensed. It's basically just Waddle, just Tyreek Hill, expecting a fraction of the ownership on Waddle. Tank Dell, the price continues to rise, but this is an awesome game environment. I know Denver's defense has played a little better of late, but it's not really reflected in the total of the game, which is in the mid 40s. So I think you could get to Tank Dell. Also not worried about Noah Brown returning. Shouldn't affect him. You made a great point on the Eagles guys. I think Devontae Smith in this range is a nice play, especially with Goddard still expected to be out. On the other side, like Ayuk's phenomenal as well. Even some interest in Pittman, and then Puka Nacua at 7K. No one's going to click his name. So I have exposure to almost every one of these guys to varying degrees. The highest ones for me are Tank Dell and Chris Olave. I guess if you want to include him in this range, I guess he's right on that cutoff.
Oh, Jordan Klein, such a great producer. Super chats. It's time. We're going to get to everything here. Again, 4K people, high point of the show. Smash that like button. We love having you here to sit through awkward silences of Matt Gajewski and myself. Amen. All right, let's get to the super chat, shall we? We've got to begin. Oh, this is good stuff. DK Tears from our guy Ace of Spades. Always nice to see my guy, the Ace of Spades, hanging out in the chat. This is always a question that he has on NBA Live before lock. So nice to see it here in the NFL streets. I will pull that up here as we get to a question that we can do in the interim. Jake Linland, $1.99 on DK. Matt Gajewski. Haven't talked about the cheapies yet, but kind of a preview. Parker, Njoku, Pats D, or Samuel, Jordan, and Atlanta. So got the tight ends Njoku versus Jordan. You got Parker versus Samuel. You got Pat Steve versus Atlanta. I am strongly preferring the second.
Same.
Awesome. Glad we're on the same. Oh, Devontae Parker chalk. What a time to be alive. E-card 40 to $4.99 in a 3-entry max. Would you have one player from Miami in each lineup? Now, that's an interesting one because, you know, I'm playing more than 3 lineups still. It's less volume than normal for me, but I'm looking at E-card 40's question, and I would probably have one player from Miami in each one, mainly because I am way over on Miami. But I guess it just kind of depends on what else you're planning on doing. And obviously what your risk tolerance is, because if Miami somehow doesn't put up 29 points, or if it becomes like, I don't know, Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert season where they poach a couple of goal line touches, you're probably in trouble to some extent. But how are you looking at that question, Matt Gajewski?
Yeah, it's kind of just a risk tolerance thing. They all project relatively well, and depending on the size of your field, you might be considering the running backs more. But I have no issues using a Miami piece in every lineup. That is entirely risk tolerance, in my opinion.
Yep, I'm totally there with you. And now Ace of Spades, of course, the tier 1 question here. All right, so we'll go down the line here. I'm going to give you the best projected. If there's anything that stands out to me, I'll let you know. But Jalen Hurts is the top projected there. Tua Tagovailoa not far behind. If you're looking at stacking up, which I would still be contemplating here in tiers, especially because tier 2 by a mile is Tyreek Hill for me. Don't completely hate that idea, so throwing it out there. Tier 3, Alvin Kamara by 0.02 over Tank Dell. Wild time to be alive. Kyron Williams in tier 4. Tier 5 is Russell Wilson, Brock Purdy within 0.2 of each other, so that's cool. Tier 6, Michael Pittman and Rashad White. Tier 7, Chris Olave by, what is that? By 0.6. Pretty close projection there too. And Ramondre Stevenson, a fantasy 1.5 over Jalen Warren there in tier 8. So pretty wild to see that against the Chargers defense. I like New England a little bit there in that spot, but I do not like Devontae Parker chalk, and we shall talk about that. Hopefully that helps you, Ace of Spades, my guy. We're now caught up on Super Chats. We continue on our merry way here at the wide receiver position, and I'm going to just kind of open this up to you in terms of what we're looking at from the chalk, in terms of who you're going to be stacking up the most. Who are wide receivers we haven't discussed yet? So anybody that's going to be sub 7K that you're getting to the most in your lineups today.
Got a lot of Olave at 6,900.
Okay.
Great game environment. And with Derek Carr and Olave together in this matchup, I think we see them continue to cook kind of like we did in the first half. Not scared of Detroit's secondary. This game has an excellent total. Aside from that, you have to go down quite a bit. The 6K range isn't as prolific in my lineups. Second most owned player for me is Nico Collins here, just an attachment to the passing game. He's in stacks, and he's a pivot off of a little more chalky Tank Dell. Deebo Samuel kind of functions in the same regard to the leverage you might be gaining off an Ayuk, but I think that one's probably going to be a little more split. So with Deebo, I don't think you're quite getting the same leverage play. He's more or less just like an excellent receiver, underpriced, in a really good game environment with a chalky quarterback, so just be aware of that. So those would be my top three in this 6K to 7K range. Olave, Nico Collins, Deebo Samuel, sprinklings of like Thielen and Hopkins.
Is there anybody that you're undercutting in a pretty prominent way? I think that's going to be the other part of this. And this is kind of where I'm leading at, where there's a number of these players that I really like getting to. I think we both do, but I look at players that I'm fading. I have a lot of shortage. Josh Downs, one guy that we didn't talk about that I have a ton of at 5,100. I think he makes a lot of my lineups work, but Elijah Moore, 7.7%. I guess it's come down a little bit here, but that one was tough for me. I prefer Amari Cooper if I'm going to be getting to anybody there on the Cleveland side of things. I mean, that just seems to make sense as leverage, considering nobody wants to click on him there. And Devontae Parker, if people are going to play chalk Devontae Parker here in this spot, I am ecstatic, because this is a passing game that's so diluted. And yeah, the Chargers, they don't bring a whole lot of resistance to the table, but Juju Smith-Schuster, Tyquan Thornton, they're all pretty close to that projection as well. And Hunter Henry at the tight end position, I think, is a good piece of leverage there. Well, not even leverage, it's just a better play, I think, than Devontae Parker at his ownership. I mean, what are we doing here?
I don't know. You see this a lot of times where they maybe have slight projection differences between players, but the one that projects better just ends up getting more owned to an extent that's not really worth playing, depending on your field size, which might be what we're running into here. As far as players I'm shorting, I have the biggest shorts on the Indy pass catchers, more so on Pittman than Downs. It's just a price thing. Downs, he allows you to do a little more. But then the really chalky, cheap receivers are players that we should highlight. Elijah Moore, everyone's talking about this like connection he had with Joe Flacco from when they briefly played together in New York, which was actually just one good game.
In 1947.
What?
I don't. I was making he's an old. He's old. I was making he's an old joke. It's okay. Keep going.
I think Elijah Moore is going to be pretty owned. Some services have him close to 20%.
Yep.
So I would imagine this comes in, like somewhere between what we have and what some of the higher end projections are, which is exceedingly owned for a guy playing in an offense which probably is going to try to be run heavy with Joe Flacco under center. And it's not like Elijah Moore hasn't been getting volume prior to this. It's actually really good. It's just now he's coming with the ownership. And the other part is we have alternatives. So in addition to Elijah Moore, just in his price range, there's like Dortch, who's going to be on the field almost every play because Michael Wilson is out.
Yep.
Jamison Williams in an ascending role against New Orleans in a really good game environment. You have a couple of really gross guys down here, but I don't mind attaching them to game stacks. Like Mingo plays a lot. Jalen Guyton is a very cheap option in LA, and Quentin Johnson just ain't it, man. So Guyton's going to be on the field a ton. A.T. Perry, if you're stacking Derek Carr like I am. Mims, if you're using Russell Wilson. I'm with you on Devontae Parker. It's basically anyone in this range who's getting ownership I'd rather fade. And I mean, with Devontae Parker, you have the exact same player in the same offense at a cheaper price, much less owned in Juju Smith-Schuster. Why wouldn't we just make that pivot? And then finally, Trey Palmer, DJ Chark, pretty decent game environment there. You can use those guys as pivots. So it's not like we're just forced into playing one of them. I'm just trying to almost spray and pray, correlate where it makes sense. I don't want a guy like Elijah Moore ending my day, especially if he's going to be owned.
Agreed. It's going to be wild seeing some of these. A.T. Perry, did we talk about him at all? Because I like A.T. Perry as the pivot 3,300 against Detroit. I think a lot of people are seeing Chris Olave. Hey, he's in. Now I can't necessarily play him. No. I think if you're looking at 3,300 and you're trying to find the guy, why not a big body that can go out and get you a touchdown catch and get you north of 10 fantasy points pretty darn quickly? Yeah, it sucks it's not Jameis Winston out there, who targeted him 4 times against Minnesota there, got that touchdown across the field, yada, yada. But like him, like Jonathan Mingo is a piece that you can pivot off at 3,300 as well. But there's so many pivots that are like the same damn thing as Devontae Parker was Bailey Zappi with a 180 passing projection or whatever it is across sports books. 180 in terms of 180. That's literally from darts. It's more interesting than seeing Bailey Zappi with 180 for a passing prop in the year of our Lord 2023. But I also have some disgusting, like, I don't know, Braxton Berrios is in a couple of lineups, but that's just because of how much Washington I have. Rondale Moore, I feel like I'm going to click on every single week at 1% and never, ever, ever make money off of it. So that's cool. And then Noah Brown, 4,500 comes back. I mean, Noah Brown's freaking good. He's had some like slate winning performances nonstop at 4,500 and nobody wants to play him this week. Sounds good. I'll do it. How about you?
Yeah, I think Noah Brown's fine. I have no issues. I prefer getting to the players I know have locked in roles. He's probably going to split some with Robert Woods. I'd rather get Tank Dell. I'd rather go up to Nico Collins, but you're also paying for that. With Noah Brown, he's cheap, so maybe worth taking on the risk depending on your build.
Did they just announce the college football playoffs?
I don't know.
Somebody's saying that that Bama made the playoffs and FSU did not.
Yep, that's the correct answer.
Ooh, I want to go on a discussion point of this here, but
I'll read it briefly. Here is the 5 main things the committee looks at. Conference championships, 1. FSU has that. Strength of schedule, FSU has that. Head-to-head competition doesn't really apply for FSU. Comparative outcomes of common opponents doesn't apply a ton here. Other relevant factors such as unavailability of key players and coaches that may have affected a team's performance during the season or likely will affect postseason performance. Ding, ding, ding. That's why FSU is not in.
Got it. Yeah, it sucks. Travis, wasn't that the quarterback, Jordan Travis?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was very fun to watch. Electric boogie, woogie, woogie. But winning 16-6 with your quarterback throwing like 50 yards or some shit, that's not exactly ideal to see in a game that you needed to make some kind of a statement. But Michigan...
Also, this is about money. Like, who wants... They know this. Who wants to watch FSU get killed by 30 points against Michigan? Nobody wants... I wouldn't even watch that. Like, I was thinking about this morning. I was like, damn, I'd probably watch a different New Year's Six Bowl instead of the college football playoff if they put FSU in. It would be a waste of time. You know the outcome ahead of time. It's like the Big Ten championship last night. No one wanted to watch that because you knew what the score was going to be. It played almost directly to the total and the team total.
What was the Michigan TCU line for the semis last year? Do you remember that off the top of your head?
It was pretty wide. Double digits for sure, but I don't remember the exact number.
Yeah, I know it was double digit. I'm just trying to remember the exact number off the top of my head. But yeah, I mean, I had this discussion all day yesterday with people nonstop in Vegas. Like, what do we do? Who's going to get in? How does it work out? I felt like it was an unenviable situation to run into. And the best case scenario for the committee was FSU losing to Louisville. And then you just have it come out. But who ended up being the 4? That's what I want to see.
I haven't actually seen it yet. You were telling me. I'm trying to fix my
somebody
CSV.
Just said that. Oh, okay. I already did that. So you should get on my level.
I'm trying to fix these Jalen Hurts stacks.
Oh, yeah. It's wild, Jalen Hurts seeing his ownership, but then none of his pass catchers being popular. Like, legitimately, none of them. So
I'm looking at these lineups. It's just like when you put Hurts with A.J. Brown and then, like, what do I want to do? Just fade both McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill? So it's like when you start doing Hurts to A.J. Brown and then have one of those studs, the rest of your lineup looks pretty meh and projects average. Like, you're just solely banking on leverage. So I don't know. I'm just trying to pick the ones I like the most out of those right now. It's very challenging.
Let's go to the Sims tool, shall we? Let's go to the Sims tool. I think this is a really good exercise, is looking at what we have for some of these Philadelphia top simulated ROIs. So again, the Sims tool is super powerful, has a ton of capabilities to help you realize the top lineups for you. I just simply am sorting by a lot of my top Tua lineups, top Purdy lineups, top quarterback lineups, and you're able to filter that out right on the page. I think it's fascinating to see what some of these top lineups look like, specifically with Jalen Hurts, because you got to be playing Zach Moss. You're playing a lot of expensive doubles. It ends up being some skinnies, which I kind of prefer, but then you got to get a lot of other pieces of your lineup correct. And I think the Sims tool does a pretty good job of showing what we're looking at there. But go to filter there, Jordan Klein, if you could. Go to filter on the far left side of the page there. Yeah, or right there, either one, either. And I just want you to look at the top. I just want to look at the top Philadelphia lineups. So if you can pull that up, that would be ideal. Do this too. We can, yep, there you go. Find me the Jalen Hurts lineups, please. That's what we're looking for here right now. It's just very difficult to construct some of these lineups because of those expensive pass catchers. But how much Jalen Hurts did you end up with?
Let me look. I'm still messing around with it. If I just ran it right now and left it alone, I would have 5%, which is the problem. The problem I want to fix.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, and this is what I wanted to point out, and this is what Jordan Klein has here. The top ones, they find some punts. Now, we have Brevin Jordan at the tight end position. He's going to be very, very popular, 2,500, filling in for Dalton Schultz in that Houston offense. Nice to have CJ Stroud throwing the ball to you, and we assume he's going to be on the field an absolute metric ton. But Julio Jones in the top projected lineup here in terms of simulated ROI. Yet another punt. There are so many of these wide receiver punts to kind of rotate around. This becomes even like more of my aggressive stance against Devontae Parker today, is it's like, I'd rather have the cheapie be a Braxton Berrios piece to go with Tua stacks, a Julio Jones to go with Philly stacks. Because if I'm going to go down and dip to the bottom of that and get to these type of builds where it's going to be a couple of these pieces, I mean, that's a Jalen Hurts +1, and it's only Julio Jones who's stacked in that one. I mean, it is just wild seeing some of these lineups. I don't think people are going to be building this way. It just seems like Jalen Hurts might end up a little bit lower owned than we're anticipating. Kind of has me reversing my mind and saying that maybe I should get to a little bit, but we do have the afternoon slate as well. I'll be firing that up. There are people saying I'm not playing Jalen Hurts stacks. Totally get it. It's a very hard thing. Stop yelling at Jordan, Eric. I always yell at Jordan Klein. He loves it though. He likes when, I'm passionate. I'm a passionate man for him, but I think that's just a really great thing to see here with Jalen Hurts, because I think that makes me confident his ownership won't quite reach the 10% number. Jordan, stop it. Stop it. You're fine. Don't look at me like that. Just pull up the Gajewski wagon. I want to see the wagon. Can we have the wagon graphic? Gajewski, who's your wagon today?
I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. Ask me in 10 minutes. I don't know where I'm going to come in on Hurts. This is going to change a lot.
Ruining every bit. It's fine. Can we get a FanDuel sim?
Ruining every bit.
You're ruining quite a few of them. Just trying to do the best I can.
Which other ones?
Texas in, Michigan in. All right, that makes sense then. Yeah. Oh, somebody said FSU is in? What is going on? People are lying and just saying things. I don't understand what's going on. Anyway, let's get back to NFL here for the people. Smash the like button, all of the good things. What's up? You're going to run a FanDuel sim for him? That makes me so happy. Look at you. Jordan Klein pulling up a FanDuel sim. This kind of just shows you how easy it is to be able to utilize this tool as well. Again, 21 minutes to go. We're able to run 10,000 lineup simulations and just be able to give you some goods right from the get-go here. We'll sort by player, top player projected ROI. We'll give you that one behind the paywall for free for sure. 3.7K people still hanging out. Maybe if we can get that like button over 1.5K, I'll have Jordan Klein show you those. But maybe, yeah, I think 1.5K, that'll do it for you. Then you can sort by the top projected player ROI and show everybody who's playing on FanDuel the goods for free. But anything else you want to talk about here at wide receiver, Matt?
I don't think so. I think we hit on just about everybody that I have exposure to. Anyone that you think we left out?
Nope. I think we hit on everybody that also that I don't have exposure to. So Devontae Parker, 85 and 2 touchdowns incoming. Very excited. Notice how I couldn't even say 100 with this. No, I'm saying that like I'm full fading him. So of course he's going to go completely nuclear now.
Let's hope not, man. Jeez, that would ruin me.
Yeah. Too much dust in here. Too much dust. Anyway, to the tight end position we go, and this is where I want to begin the conversation. We always go like expensive, move our way down, because then you kind of know what to expect every single show. But sometimes you get this piece like Brevin Jordan, 2,500 on a slate at tight end, and it opens up the entire cabinet of goods to you. Everything, the cookies, the potato chips, the Frito-Lays that you might enjoy. Cooler Ranch Doritos for me. I have the entire kitchen cupboard open because Brevin Jordan, my highest owned tight end. How about you?
Yep, same for me. He's just at a price point which makes him really hard to fail. And the offense is amazing. I mean, I think the only thing you're really hoping doesn't happen is like this weird log jam that they've done in the past at tight end, which I don't think will be the case. Brevin's pretty clearly their best pass catching tight end.
Yep. I think it's pretty safe to say that he is going to be the guy that is going to be on the field the most. He has the opportunity, the first crack at it here, and he's projected for north of 7 fantasy points, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at 2,500, again, that does wonders, game of wonders for your lineup, if you will. Yeah, I just quoted Aladdin. What are you going to do about it?
Aladdin.
It's beautiful. Have you seen Aladdin before, Matt Gajewski?
No.
You've never seen Aladdin?
No.
What did you watch as a kid? Tape?
I did watch a lot of sports. I watched SpongeBob and Pokemon and a lot of sports. My dad likes sports, so when he was watching TV, I would just watch with him.
Yeah. Well, I would call Trey McBride not quite a Charizard, but more of like a Charmeleon, a little bit more of a Charmeleon. He's evolving in front of our eyes. He's very, very good. He is still the most popular tight end here on this slate, even against a Pittsburgh defense here, but they've been 27th against the position in the NFL this season, so I don't completely besmirch the idea of playing some of him. I have a lot of 2 tight end here on this slate. It's more David Njoku at 4,100, who, even with Mr. Joe Flacco, it's so weird to just say his name again. Feels like 1948. But David Njoku, 4,100, is 800 away from Trey McBride. But McBride has just had this insane role where you're seeing a crazy, crazy amount of targets coming in his direction. And hard to get away from some of that on this slate. But again, 4,900, not exactly cheap. Who are the popular tight ends that you're getting to the most?
So outside of Brevin, I think this is where things get a little interesting and where it might open up a little bit. But for me personally, be playing a decent amount of Logan Thomas. That's largely just a game environment thing. I mean, Miami's going to be hyper owned. I like Howell quite a bit. McBride is my third. That's just mainly a role thing with him. And no Ertz even as a threat to return for this team now that he's been cut. So they're just going all in on McBride. Really awesome target share. And Njoku, I think, is somewhat okay. I'm still worried about Flacco and the whole offense. But, it's a bad tight end position. And we don't have a lot of studs outside of, at San Francisco. That's really the only one. And beyond that, it's just sprinklings of guys, which I'm sure we can get into. But what are you doing with your most exposed tight ends?
Playing way too much Logan Thomas.
It's both of us.
Yep, we're screwed. We're absolutely fucked. But Brevin Jordan is 2,500, and Logan Thomas is in the game environment that I have the most of at 3,600, and that is just coming along for the ride. Juwan Johnson's been talked about in other places. No, thank you. I will pass here in this spot, although Detroit's defense is completely dog shit. Conquo, 3,100. I am sick of beating my head against a wall and playing this guy every single week only to reach his high point of 8.5 fantasy points last week, which meant absolutely dog doo-doo to me because Pat Freiermuth completely set the Shire on fire. That is for sure. Freiermuth there, 4,300. I'm going to get to a little bit of him there. I'm completely confused why he's not popular coming off of last week. New role, new offensive coordinator. Do I expect 24? No, I do not, but I still want to get to a little bit there as well. Gerald Everett, 3,500. Always nice to see that visor out on the field, running routes and doing things and actually being active within that offense. Although, again, I think New England is going to be a little bit more live in this game. 5.5, go snag that where you can. And I would rather do anything than roster the 3% Durham Smythe. So although I have Logan Thomas, I will not be playing Durham Smythe. So ends my discussion of the tight end position.
I think you hit on a lot of good guys. Just to circle back to a few of them, I am honestly a little surprised like Juwan Johnson's not higher owned. I'm going to be playing a fair amount of him in that New Orleans Detroit game, which just seems like I think I'm probably a little overweight too when you just look at the whole game versus what the field is playing it. I think he makes pretty easy stacking partner with Derek Carr, easy to double with like an Olave, something like that. A couple of the gross guys that I have that I feel horrific that are actually in my lineups. Hunter Henry's in a few. My goodness, don't feel good about that. But I mean, once you're just spraying these cheap tight ends, I think you're just hoping for a score. We'll see if New England can even score the ball today. I don't know. Gerald Everett, I think he's fine. Same game environment. It doesn't play a ton. You'll see him mix with other tight ends on that roster, but 3,500, why not? Kate Otten is the guy that plays constantly and sees no volume. Occasionally he has like a touchdown here or there, but 3,200 for him, I think, is fine. The contrarian spend ups I'm using are Laporta. Again, love that game environment. He's still just a sprinkling because of the price point. And Freiermuth, coming off an awesome game, now has a really easy matchup. He was only about like 70% of the routes last week. I think this continues to ascend for him. Now he'll be in his third game removed from injury. Don't think he has like the monster performance we saw last week, but as far as volume goes, it should only get better for Freiermuth.
Yeah, I think Freiermuth is just a little bit underrated here in this spot relative to his ownership. And maybe, again, we get to the flip and people are box score watching and smashing that. But for me, it's just a new opportunity to, one shot to see everything you ever wanted. So you got to capture it or let it slip. So here's what it is. AP, welcome to Team Stokastic. Love seeing the badge. Makes me happy. Makes Matt Gajewski especially happy. Look at him smiling right now. Look at that smile. Thank you. Anywho, we continue on our merry way, friends, to defense. No, actually, do we have anything else at the tight end position? Any George Kittle, Sam Laporta to get different and flip the build by going expensive?
I have Laporta. I don't have Kittle, which I don't feel great about because I think he might be an access point to Brock Purdy at lower ownership. But our Sims didn't give me a lot of him, which makes me think he's probably either neutral to maybe slightly overowned. I don't know. He's another one I had some trouble with, in addition to like Hurts. But I think I'm going to ride with it and not play any of him and just go to Debo and Ayuk and see how it lands. Otherwise, yeah, Laporta I think is solid, but no one else that we haven't already mentioned.
Oh, we got somebody asking Jeremiah Johnson at Eric Lindquist, any owners box locks for the day? Oh, so nice that you asked. So obviously they're a little bit different in terms of the projections here, but we've got 18.03 fantasy points here for Zach Moss in this spot. Running back, flex, super flex, doesn't matter. You just fire him up. Same thing that you're going to be doing here on DK and on FanDuel and on any version of DFS/fantasy sports that you will be playing in the year of our Lord 2023 on December 3rd. He's just a phenomenal play. I do think that Amon-Ra St. Brown is an exponentially better play over here. Pretty high value score there, projected for north of 20 fantasy points for their scoring. So I think that that's another decent one. And then I just still love getting to Sam Howell for like some of those doubles. I think it's really fun to put Tua and Sam Howell into the same lineups over on Owner's Box. So you're looking at like not just super flex and having another stack over there, but the same stack from the same game, which again, if this thing goes completely nuclear, both quarterbacks should be dropping back an insane amount. There is a great opportunity to capitalize on all of that upside in the highest total game of the slate. So check that out. Hopefully that helps here for Owner's Box. Mason with a $5 super chat before we get to defense. Why is Jaylen Warren so high owned? I hate it for cash DK, but I am doing it. I think at cash, it's just one of those like blocker situations where, if you're not feeling good about it in tournaments such as Life, but like, I think there's paths where you can go Moss, McCaffrey, White in cash. I'm not sure. Did you end up playing cash today on DK?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So there's a couple of like specific builds as I was hand editing stuff, mainly to see what is going to win the millie. That's a chalk always wins joke, but I'm not going to be playing cash today, but I was kind of toying around with what that build looks like. I think Jaylen Warren, if you're not going to be punting with probably two wide receivers, or at least going double tight end where you go Brevin Jordan to like a Juwan Johnson or a David Njoku, I think you got to be playing some Jaylen Warren there. And it can be a blocker where I think he ends up a little bit more popular. And we've got him nearly 20% owned here. I have no problem with it, but I think Moss, White, those two for sure are in it. And then Christian McCaffrey, he's a luxury item, but like you can get to him here, I think, in cash today. But how do you feel about Jaylen Warren? Why is he so high owned?
I honestly think it's just the matchup. I don't know.
Yes.
That's literally
and he's cheap.
That's true. He's not expensive for sure. I mean, he's not like cheap relative to the guys in his price range. We named about 6 of them that I would rather play than him for leverage. For cash, I don't know. I'm happy I didn't play and have to wrestle with this decision. For me, what I would do in cash is just play Moss, McCaffrey, and Rachaad White, and then you don't have to mess with it. But I'm not playing cash. Take this with a grain of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt, or a pinch of pepper. It always depends. How do you eat your eggs, Matt Gajewski?
Scrambled.
Scrambled. Always scrambled?
Yes.
Whole milk or 2%?
I don't drink milk.
Oh, but you scramble your eggs, don't you? Scrambled eggs need like milk.
No, they don't. Not great with dairy, so it's a little rough for me.
How do you scramble them then? You just
What? You crack the egg in the pan and mash it up.
But like,
what are you talking
about?
Put
milk, scrambled eggs. You always put I always put milk with it. Am I out of my mind right now, Jordan Klein?
You can do that. I just don't do it with milk.
Makes it fluffier. You don't need it, but like, come on. He uses almond milk. They don't need milk.
Almond milk.
Matt eats eggs scrambled with tuna. Have you ever had eggs and tuna together?
Not mixed, but side by side. Yeah, almost every day.
Hit the like button. Not for that.
Go from one to the next.
Oh, God. Tuna and eggs.
I mean, if you like protein-dense foods, those are two of the best. The chat is right. I also don't like ice.
Protein Gajewski. Out of your mind, Eric. What do you mean now? Water makes eggs fluffier than milk. Yeah, so you can put some water in there too.
I didn't know that. That one I will try because it's not dairy.
There you go. Eric is right. I just normally do milk. The milk makes it better. It's delicious. Anywho, tight end, we're done. Let's go to defense and get ourselves the heck up out of here. And now I don't even know if I want to eat breakfast anymore, but we have pretty spread out ownership. Falcons defense against the Jets because Tim Boyle is dust, and to dust he shall return. Buccaneers, they're pretty popular as well. And Dolphins, it is what it is. Yeah, they're going up against Washington. Sam Howell gets sacked 484,962 times this season. I might be a little off, but I think it's going to be close to that by the end of the year. Who are the defenses that you are rostering the most, Matt Gajewski?
I love this question. I'm not prepared to answer it until I look at the Sims because I spend no time on this. But I think you can largely see why these defenses project well and why they end up in rosters. So my most owned is the Falcons. I think it goes without saying playing Tim Boyle is going to project extremely well for a defense. Number 2 for me is Carolina, which I think is a little trickier to decipher. Honestly, to evaluate it, I think it just comes down to price because then I look down the list and the Patriots are my 4th most owned defense. So when I open those lineups up and just isolate them, it's allowing like one extra stud in the lineup. So it's not even really what does Carolina's defense do against Baker Mayfield or New England's, what do they do against Herbert? I think it's just what they allow you in the rest of the lineup. The other defense that rounds out the top 4 here is Tampa Bay. Facing Bryce Young, I mean, that speaks for itself as well. Mm-hmm. Where are your top 4 defenses?
Panthers by a mile. 2,500. I'm playing so much Panthers against Tampa Bay. And these are all lineups, obviously, without Rachaad White. And Rachaad White's one of my higher owned running backs at 35%. But like in lineups that I don't, 2,500 Panthers does a lot for you. And it's really, really fun. I love the Patriots at 2,400 against the Chargers as well. How many times the Chargers going to be dropping back Justin Herbert? And we've seen them have some issues in protection, and Justin Herbert to Keenan Allen. If it's not that, they're having some issues trying to get it to other pass catchers because Quentin Johnston has the capabilities of a newborn baby lamb out on a football field trying to catch footballs. It is just flopping around like Magikarp, Magikarp. You got that because of Pokemon, right?
Yeah, that one I know.
Thank you. It's so beautiful. To finish on a high note, my friends. Good stuff here. Per usual, 6 minutes here before lock. Make sure you have your lineups in, and then also make sure that you're checking out Odd Shopper. If you're going to be betting, if you're in a legal betting state, even if you're not, because the fantasy optimizer there at the top, Prize Picks, Underdog, unbelievable stuff here at Odd Shopper. Now we have the entire gamut here for you. It used to just be $20 just to get the picks in the Discord. It's now $15 for the Discord and the Odd Shopper tools and the Positive EV expected tool and the Parlay Builder and the Prize Picks and Underdog optimizers. Incredible stuff here going. $49.95 for the month, $14.95 for the week. Unbelievable stuff that you have going on over at Odd Shopper. So sign up for that. Check it out. Again, our brother, sister company. It's not even how it's looked. It's one and the same. Stochastic is Odd Shopper. Odd Shopper is Stochastic. Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. Oddshopper.com, friends. Check it out. Great stuff going on here. Myself, I see Nathan Joyce, my guy, and Chad firing up parlays and ladders on Capella rebounds. And I'm telling you, phenomenal community. We've got Greg Ehrenberg, one of the sharpest bettors that I know, taught me everything that I know, except for that's not true because he would have taught me how to make 100K every single week, because that seems to be what he's doing. So check that out, my friends. We've got so much cool stuff going on over at OddsShopper now. $15 for the week. Get into that Discord, start asking questions, and start making money. Alrighty, y'all. 4 minutes to go. Let's recap for the people as we get the heck up out of here. Your highest owned quarterbacks are...
Oh, I'm on the defense tab. My highest owned quarterbacks are Purdy, Howell, and Russell Wilson. Pretty big drop off. There's a massive drop off between from Purdy and Howell down to Wilson, though. So I just want to highlight that. Still like sub 10% on Wilson, and he's spread amongst like 10 guys.
Oh, super chat. Somebody else had a super chat. Oh, there we go. Living in a Ford, $2 flex. Kittle or Stevenson? Kittle or Ramondre. Yeah, I'm assuming that's who it is, but it says D Stevenson. So there you go. Yeah, I'd be going to Ramondre, I think, over Kittle there.
Same.
Cool. Yep, she's going backwards. Great stuff. Running back, so quarterback too. I think we all knew that by now. Sam Howell as well. Running back, I like Brock Purdy as well. He's number 3 for me. But running back, Zach Moss by a mile. Christian McCaffrey, really, really good. Whom else for you?
Moss, McCaffrey, Rashad White.
Chalk, magic.
A lot of chalk at running back. Think it's pretty strong though.
It's very strong chalk. I'm just being a dick because it's kind of what I got to do. Like getting to Najee Harris is some leverage, even though Jalen Ward's still going to be somebody who's in my lineups as well. Tyreek Hill by a mile for me, a wide receiver, but whom else for you, Matt Gajewski?
Tyreek Hill is number 1. Terry McLaurin is 2. Chris Olave is 3.
Look at that. Terry McLaurin I thought Curtis Samuel, because he's been your highest owned like back-to-back weeks.
Yeah, one of those games he got ejected.
That was not ideal. Oh, that was not ideal for you.
I played him in
Thanksgiving. He smashed.
I did play him on Thanksgiving too. So made back maybe 1 or 2% of my losses when I had him everywhere the week prior.
I love DFS
because him doing well doesn't mean I won, but him getting ejected definitely means I lose everything. You know what I mean?
Yep, I 100% know what you.
It's like, he had a sick game, but then that doesn't guarantee you win.
Yep, but if it's your highest owned wide receiver and he gets ejected, you're screwed. Tight end, what?
You're done if that happens. Anyway, yeah.
Brevin Jordan, hi. How are you this fine day? Him, David Njoku, Logan Thomas, though, actually my second highest owned out of that grouping. Who are your highest 3 tight ends?
Brevin, Logan Thomas, and McBride.
And defense for me, 2 cheapies down there. Love getting to the punts there. I like the Patriots at 2,400, Carolina at 2,500. And then I think the Falcons are decent defense because Tim Boyle couldn't throw against you or me guarding people in coverage. He'd probably just throw it to us. In fact, that's all I got for defense. Anything for you as we get out of here?
No, really, the only thing I want to know is who you think is better between Tim Boyle and Tommy DeVito.
Tommy DeVito. I've at least seen Tommy DeVito throw a complete pass in my life. So there's that. Jordan Klein, thank you so much for another phenomenal Sunday here hanging out in the NFL DFS streets. Smash that like button. If not for me, for my friend Matt _Gajewski over on the X/Twitters. Matt, any final words for the people as we get out of here?
Thank you guys for coming and hanging out. I know we'll have projections and everything for the afternoon slate. Be cognizant of late swap as always, but otherwise just thank you for being here. It's much appreciated.
Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua go off today. You will never hear from me again. That is for sure. It's their last 2 weeks of debacles. It is what it is. But thank you to Jordan. Thank you to Matt. I'm Eric Lindquist. Thank you to Owner's Box. Don't forget to check them out. Until next time, best of luck in the NFL streets today.